Council, everybody, and anybody watching on is it live or stream or whatever. So welcome to you if you're watching at home. So let's move straight on with the business. And I have to announce that we are not quite in further. So I will have to take advice if anything comes up. Oh, you're back. Thank you. Apologies for absence. Karen.
Apologies for Councillors Party, Moore, Fowles and Whitby.
Any else? Liz done. Anybody else? Can't say anything. Move on. Julie Foster. Hang on. I have switched it on. Can you? It's on. I think it's on. Right. Minutes of the previous meeting, pages 9 to 22. Is there anything that anybody wishes to correct? Or we are approving those minutes. Happy with that?
Great.
Disclosures of members' interests. Anybody want to disclose any interest? I'm looking. Can't see anybody. Yes, Tom.
Normally, we stand on the passing of one of our colleagues, John Morris.
I'm coming to that.
Oh, sorry.
Coming to that. Right. No more. I can't see any more. Right. Announcements. Just what you said. We do have the sad passing of former councillor John Morris. I had the privilege of being on Castle Morpeth with John, and he was a decent bloke. And his wife was on as well. So we'll have a minute silence, please. Thank you. Does anybody want to say anything about John? He was a former chairman of the council, and I knew him from Castle Morpeth. Leader.
Oh. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I wasn't planning to say anything, but actually I've worked with John Morris for many years, both at Castle Morpeth and eventually here at the County Council. He was a county councillor for a long time, and from my perspective, he was extremely dedicated to serving his particular community and the whole council. And I think he was actually quite a model for what council should be. So I do like to take this opportunity to pay him tribute. So thank you to John.
Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just on behalf of the Labour group, because he was one of our members, John made a fantastic contribution to the Northumberland as a whole, but also as Castle Morpeth, as was represented at his Thanksgiving service by so many members who were there, including cabinet members, and it was much appreciated by the family. And all the work they did, and he did in particular, lives on in the area I locally represent now, and it'll be a miss. Thank you.
Let's see. Councillor Deal.
Can I just add, I knew John because he was on Sport England and did a lot of work with the North East on delivery sport. Sorry. But just to add, we haven't actually reminded everybody about the sad passing of Councillor Eileen Burt. And I think that she died in August of this year, and she was a long-standing county councillor, but also a former district councillor at Tynedale, and also a former parish councillor.
I cannot recall. Did we? Well, apologies if we have missed Eileen Burt off. Councillor Roughhead?
Thanks, Chair. Just on the basis of what Councillor Dale said, we didn't mark the respect of the passing of Councillor George Miller, who was a county councillor here in the 70s, and he was a long-serving member of Berwick Borough Council and a former mayor of Berwick as well. And I report that as well.
Okay, we will try and brush up on communications and etc. Okay, I need to remind everybody that the Remembrance Service is here at 11 a.m. on Monday. Also, lead out is then on the Tour of Britain cycle race. Now
Yes.
we've had it.
I'd just like to actually give a word of thanks to residents right across Northumberland. The Tour of Britain stage took place here in Northumberland on the 9th of September. Feedback was excellent all over the county, from the start in Berwick all the way down the coast of our wonderful county. Visitors were impressed by our county. The participants told me that this was actually their favourite stage because the support they got was greater here in Northumberland than anywhere else in the country, and the organisers all did a fantastic job. But in particular, I want to thank the communities of Northumberland, including the many school children who actually turned out in huge numbers to support the event, which was a great success for our county. Thank you.
And finally, on announcements and correspondence, I have to announce that there will be an extra county council meeting. The requirement for an extraordinary meeting of full council, I'll read this out. The county council members will be aware that a letter was sent to all members by the chief executive on the 4th of October 2019. This letter explained that a report would come before the meeting of the county council today, the 6th of November, with a proposal to change county council's approach for appointing its local auditor. This proposal would bring the county council in line with the majority of other local authorities in the country. Relevant notice was given by the council to all required entitles as prescribed by the local audit, that is the Auditor Resignation and Removal Regulations 2014. The county council then received a request from one of those entitles, the current local auditor, for additional time to respond to that notice. They requested longer than the 14-day statutory notice time allowed to them in the regulations. Agreeing that request in turn meant that other entitles, such as the independent auditor panel, require more time to complete their parts of the statutory process. Therefore, this item will therefore be brought before an extraordinary meeting of the County Council on December the 18th, 2009. Once responses have been 2019, sorry. Once responses have been received from all entitles required by the regulations, this will ensure that all requirements of the Local Audit and Accountability Act 2014 are fully complied with, and any new appointment is made by required deadlines. So that's the 18th of December at 10:30. So can you note that in your diaries? It will come out. Okay, I have no further announcements or correspondence, so let's move straight into questions. Question number 1. Councillor Robinson to Councillor Riddle.
Nice to see that Norwich City Council has been awarded the 2019...
Can you put your microphone to the
2019 RIBA Sterling Prize for their 100-unit social housing project. With the rider of the judges, these desirable, spacious, low-energy properties should be the norm for all council housing. Given our stated intent to build 1,000 new social housing units, can we have assurances that these will be built to an ambitious standard instead of just being built down to a price?
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Firstly, I would like to congratulate Norwich on winning the Sterling Prize. It is a considerable achievement. It's a significant achievement and shows what an ambitious council can do. We are similarly ambitious, and I can assure Councillor Robinson and the rest of the councillors that we will not be building down to a price. Instead, we will be building homes that are highly energy efficient, future-proofed, and meet the needs of residents, truly homes for life. In rolling out our plans, we are discussing with partners issues around modern methods of construction, available in future technologies, technical standards, and future legislation to ensure that we provide the homes that people actually want. We are also talking to experts in the field and looking at best practice, and in this respect, I will be visiting the Norwich scheme in the near future. Thank you.
Supplementary?
No, Chair. I don't know the partners you talked of course, but the North East's very own George Clark is now working with Northumbria University on exactly the points you raised, to make social housing attractive, low running costs. Can I suggest that we make contact with Northumbria University and make sure we get the recommendations and the suggestions of that project and include them in our social housing build?
If officers are not already doing that, we can certainly look at it. I'm not actually proposing that we build houses to passive house standard. You know, people, I think, in the North East like actually to have a window open at night and things like that. But, you know, we do want to do the best we can without making them too expensive. I believe that the Norwich scheme only added about 10% to the cost. So it's very interesting and we must learn from best practice.
Thank you. Question number 2, Councillor Hill to the leader.
Thank you. Unfortunately, or at least unfortunately for me, I'm struggling a bit with my voice. I hope you... Oh, thank you. Does the leader agree that NCC could do more to help ensure proper scrutiny of Northumbria Police? If so, what are your plans?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes, I do agree that we should do more to hold Northumbria Police to account. But that's not saying that we don't actually do quite a lot already. I know we have a new Police and Crime Commissioner. I've already made arrangements as leader to have a face-to-face meeting with her. But actually in the background there is a considerable amount of daily contact between police commanders and police officers in Northumberland and our officers, so there is a lot of partnership working there. The police come to have a sort of a regular update with our cabinet members occasionally, and we do have the Chief Constable who's been here in this room, and we will actually request him to return again if he wants to answer our questions. And then we also have a member on the police's own scrutiny panel, and they have themed meetings, and one of the meetings that we have proposed is that it should be a themed meeting about rural crime only, so that we concentrate on that issue. But I think that policing in Northumberland has become more of an issue because we're all finding more and more problems in the areas that we represent. I've heard some fairly bad stories, actually, of things that have happened across our county over the last year or so. And a lot of it seems to me to boil down to the fact that we don't have as many police officers on the beat in Northumberland. Now, that brings me to the point of why we don't have as many police officers on the beat in Northumberland. And if you look at the published accounts of Northumbria Police over the last 4 or 5 years, you will find that their budget per year is not much different to what it was 5 years ago. So the question I've got is, why in Northumberland are we suffering from having fewer police patrolling our streets and our rural highways? And that's what I would actually like our scrutiny committees to look at. So I'm going to ask our scrutiny chairs to see what they can do to have a look and look into this problem. Because it's all about budgets, and it's a bit like what used to happen in this county council. We used to blame budget cuts for everything. Well, we don't. We actually now just plan things properly in a proper way, and so we don't have these emergency cuts. And why on earth we've suffered in Northumberland in particular from this reduction in the number of police officers is beyond me, because the figures don't show that should be necessary to run a police force. So that's one of the things that I would like our scrutiny committee to look into, is what is their budget position truly, rather than what their public position is. And also, what has been the net effect of their reductions in numbers on our county of Northumberland. There's been much publicity about what the government proposals are. So the government proposals are actually to put 20,000 extra police officers on the street. And what does that mean for Northumberland? Well, they're in the process of recruiting 187 this year alone, and there'll be 187 next year and 187 extra police on the streets in the Northumbria area in 3 years' time. That should have a major impact. But we've got to make sure as a county that they address all of the issues in all of our communities right across the county. So we need to, quite rightly, hold them to account to do that, and we will do that. But I here publicly ask our scrutiny committees to have a very close look at what their actions are in our fair county of Northumberland.
Okay,
Thank you.
supplementary.
Thank you for that. In terms of the Northumbria Police and Crime Panel, will you use the influence of the 2 members that Northumberland County Council have on that panel to suggest some reforms in the way that panel works? Because I went to see the last meeting and it was embarrassing. There was next to no scrutiny going on, probably because quite simply it was made up of Labour councillors who weren't going to hold the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner to account, or in fact it would have been the other way round if it was predominantly Conservative and it was a Conservative Police and Crime panel, to allow things like recordings of the meeting, the transparency measures that is normal place in local authorities, public question time. But I'm asking what the basis is, and I've just listened to a long speech. So in terms of specific matter of the scrutiny, you have a role on the scrutiny committee, the panel, and will you use our positions to look for reform in how that panel works? Because it's hopeless.
Right, that's the question.
Yeah, I actually do think that's a positive idea. The feedback I've had from the Northumbria Police and Crime Commissioner Scrutiny Panel is that it doesn't work particularly effectively, and it's not very transparent, and it should be. And again, that's something that our scrutiny committees have got a perfect right to have a look at.
Question 3, Councillor Laurie.
Thank you for passing the mic.
Good evening, Derek. Right.
My question is for Councillor Sanderson, and I'd just like to ask, with the number of motorists who ignore the tidal warning signs on the Holy Island Causeway and the continued problems this causes, what are we doing to address this?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question, and thank you also for raising this with me on a number of occasions recently. The County Council have worked very closely with the RNLI and also the Coast Guard to try and ensure that the message that we continue to give out to motorists is a consistent one and an easy to understand one, which is that tides come up, and if your car is going across the causeway at the wrong time, then you are likely to end up with a very wet vehicle and a large cost to the taxpayer to tidy up and remedy the situation. In fact, there have been nearly 50 rescues in the last 5 years, and that's totally unacceptable. So what we are going to do as this administration is we are going to significantly improve the interactive signs at the entrance to the causeway, and that will include automatic number plate recognition, so that that will pick up foreign number plates and will put the message in the language that is appropriate to that vehicle. It sounds very complicated and it could easily go wrong, but don't blame me if it does. But I think it will help, because we've had a number of rescues that have involved foreign drivers, and we want to do all we can to continue to make Holy Island a fantastic destination in our brilliant county, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay, supplementary? No supplementary. No supplementary. I go straight to Councillor Dale, question number 4.
Thank you. Just 2 questions. Councillor Riddle, how many planning enforcement cases are open at the present time?
The answer to that is 534.
Supplementary?
From Councillor Dale to Councillor Riddle, how many planning enforcement cases have been, this is my question 2, how many planning enforcement cases have been open for more than 5 years?
Answer to that is 4 in total.
Thank you. Right.
Thank you. Can I just go
sorry,
back?
you're
Sorry.
gonna
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, do you think we're talking about scrutiny? Obviously, 534 is a large amount, but also I'm more concerned about the ones that have been open for more than 4 years, because they actually do have an impact on people's lives. I think what I would like to do is, first of all, could I ask, please, that the relevant area committee planning committees have an update on the amount of enforcement in their areas? We've always done that before. We're not asking about the actual ones. What we want to know is that there is real work being done to get rid of these enforcements, because there's an awful lot. I know it's a big county, but there's an awful lot of them out there. I know 2 very bad ones, and I've spoken to you about them. I'm not going to embarrass anybody about them, because obviously it's privacy. But also, on top of that, you're talking about scrutiny. Maybe you could ask the scrutiny committee, the relevant scrutiny committee, to have a look at enforcement over a period of time, because there has been an issue and it continues to be an issue.
Thank you. Can I remind members that, of course, enforcement is not statutory; it is discretionary, and we don't have to do it. But of course, we'd make a bit of a mockery of planning if we didn't do it. I'm quite prepared for the area committees to have a breakdown. That's not a problem. And what I would say is that when I took over portfolio of the planning, we were understaffed on enforcement. We are now up to our staff number, and I think there are plans to employ some additional staff still. So, you know, we are onto it. I do know how much it means to members that we do actually have teeth. And, you know, like I say, it's not something that we have to do, it's something we choose to do, but we need to do it properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7. Receive the minutes of cabinet meetings held on, the first one is item 1, Tuesday the 10th of September, pages 23 to 36. Councillor Homer.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a matter of record, apologies were given that day by myself, Councillor Oliver and Councillor Jackson, who were involved in executive team recruitment with Councillor Dickinson. Thank you.
Okay. Tuesday the 17th. Yes? Sorry, Alton.
32. Oh, sorry, paragraph 36 on page 32. I understand there's been a delay on the examination by some months. I just wondered if members could be given an update on the timetable.
Who would this, John?
We have those supplementary documents now. I don't see why members can't be updated. Sorry, I believe we do have those documents now, and I don't see why members can't be updated.
Pages. Councillor Dungworth.
So on page 25. under the expansion of Whitwick, Horton Grange and New Delaval schools. I just want to clarify, is this on? Yeah. I just want to clarify, we are talking about expansion in terms of mobile classrooms rather than school buildings, aren't we?
Councillor Daly, do you want?
Can I just say that these are, sorry, if mobile classrooms does it a disservice. These are, and in fact I've had the pleasure of opening what you would class as a mobile in Blythe, which is, to all intents and purposes, you look at it and it looks like it's part of the school. It's actually built into the fabric of the school. And I've been out to see a number of these world-class learning environments. These are state-of-the-art with Wi-Fi, fully insulated, electricity, everything in them. They are an extension to the school because we needed to make an extension to the school very quickly, because for some reason in the past, when house building was approved, nobody thought that extra children would be created. We took on the problem, we solved it, and we've done that within a very short period of time. So if you haven't, Councillor Dunworth, I'm happy for you to have a look at the new builds, the builds in Blythe, and other ones that we've actually done, as well as we go through the next few years, the permanent buildings which will be done. But these are state-of-the-art learning environments for our young people, and I'm very proud of them.
17th of September, pages 37 to 42. Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask, on the number 42, report of the Service Director of Finance, I've had residents on to me from the west of the county concerning the school transport to children at the middle school at Bellingham. And I'm sure Councillor Riddle's had people on, and so we'll no doubt have Councillor Gibson has as well. And they were...
Can I just ask, is this on here?
Yes, I was going to ask the question. It's under the... There was a project underspend in the school budget of £800,000. This would be reviewed by next year. Yeah. What I was going to ask you was, would you please consider, as there's an underspend, looking at reimbursing those children who go to Bellingham Middle School who live out of the area?
Councillor Daly?
Sorry, Richard, sorry.
I can just address the budget part of it. I think the underspend, the underspend has been in the sixth form transport, which of course wouldn't apply to Bellingham Middle School. So it is related to sixth form post-16 transport costs.
Okay, let's move on. The next meeting, which is the 8th of October, 43 to 50. Anybody? I can't see anybody, so we'll move on. And we have to approve, on the top of page 3, we have to approve the minutes number 40A of the 17th of September, meeting relating to the outcome and outline business case for the Holtwhistle Primary School provision for the Wise Academy Trust. Are we happy to agree that? Hang on, Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say I'm really pleased with this. Thank you very much to the Cabinet for approving, and yourselves for approving this. It's a great thing for Holtwhistle. We've got now 2.65 million to refurb the school, which is going to go a long way to make a great school. It isn't a new school, but it'll look just like a new school and be like a new school. It'll be updated. Thank you very much to Wayne for what he's done. Zoe Carr, the director of WISE, and the members of staff for all the work they've done behind the scenes to get this up and running and going. Just bear in mind, this is going to be a feeder school to Hayden Bridge, which Hayden Bridge would have closed if it hadn't been that, so thank you all very much.
Right. Can we agree that minute? Agree. Next one. Minute 49.1 of the 8th of October 2019, meeting relating to the Morpeth Leisure Centre. Can we agree that? Agreed. Right, let's move on. Received minutes of following committees. Number 1, Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, pages 51 to 66. Councillor Renat Thompson.
You've already done half my job, Chair. I hereby present the minutes of the Family and Children's Services Scrutiny Committee, pages 51 to 66, on Tuesday the 5th of September, Thursday the 3rd of October, and Monday the 16th of September.
Anything on those minutes? Councillor Dale.
Thank you. Can I just ask you, when it calls of the report of the exclusion task, the actual report, did it identify where the main issues of exclusion were of children?
Handed back, yeah.
Is this you, Mark? I'll hand over to the Vice Chair who led that report.
Chair, there's a second report which is coming to the next Facts Committee. However, the report is online, so it can be read by all members. There are no specific indicators with regards to this. Nothing that can be tied down at the moment in a granular capacity. However, we have asked for more information to be provided to both the committee and on a regular basis so that we can look into further detail on this.
Okay, thank you. I see no further. Let's... Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the updates we received around the child protection plans.
What page?
I'm just looking for it there. It was under the performance and the list of clarifications from Alan Hartwell on the second last page. It's just to say that we haven't received that information yet. I know Kath McAvoy was going to sort it out, and I'm sure it's on its way, but it is a couple of meetings later and we still haven't received it because it was around its link to universal credit in the most deprived areas in Northumberland.
I have an indication from that is on its way.
Yeah, that will be done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Dungworth.
Sorry, I wasn't going to ask this question, but and I'm not doing it mischievously, but there's been lots of reports recently about children placed in inappropriate accommodation, looked after children nationally, and I'm just wondering what the situation is with regard to Northumberland.
Is this on the agenda?
Well,
it's under, sorry, I'm under, it's about children leaving care and
yeah.
Councillor?
Yeah, I mean, what I would suggest is obviously it would have been, I've seen those news reports as well. What I can say to you is, and I've got Kath McAvoy sitting there, but I think that we have very robust quality measures and very robust monitoring measures to ensure that our children, as best we can, are protected and are in the right environments. The things you point out about some councils, I think predominantly in the south, which have been putting children into barges, into other very inappropriate accommodation. And I think I'm have an assurance, because I'm not getting a panic look from Kath there, that we have absolutely the right measures. I know from when I talk to officers, Graham Writer, who works with our looked after children, that we have everything in place to ensure that our children are looked after.
As I say, it's not a vexatious question at all, and I just wonder if maybe an information note, an advice note, because when I was doing social work with young people, it was an issue, and I'm not saying we did it, but finding good quality accommodation for some of our most troubled children is difficult.
Yeah. So what I would say on that, we'll absolutely get that done. The other thing as well, which I think it's important for members to be aware, is that we are investing millions now into actually our own homes. That is something I have been passionate to actually bring on board. We are bringing forward a delivery plan that will be made transparent to members over the next couple of months, but there is an absolute commitment and an absolute personal commitment from me, and I know a fantastic staff in Children's Services, to actually look after more of our children in Northumberland, which is actually morally the right thing to do.
Right. Councillor Renner Thompson.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Dungworth. I cannot find it in all my paperwork, but we get regular updates on the performance of the department with regards to look after children, and the members of the scrutiny committee are aware of this, and it's something that they ask about when that does come up. So it's not just the administration saying that, it is something that we do take seriously and we do look at quite regularly.
Okay. Right. 2, communities in place. Overview and scrutiny, pages 67 to 74. Welcome, Councillor Reid, back.
But yeah, back from the dead. Yeah, that's right. Anyway, I can actually only move the minutes on page 67
No.
to 70, which is the 30th of August.
So pages...
I did that one, and then my vice chair, who's sitting on the end there, can move the rest.
Right. Anything before we move to Councillor Gallagher? I can't see anybody. Right, Councillor Gallagher, can you move the minutes?
Yes, I'd like to move the minutes for the Community and Place Overview Scrutiny for the 2nd of October, pages 71 to 73.
I see nobody. Can we approve? 3, Health and Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny, pages 70. Was someone putting a hand up? Yeah. 75 to 92. Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I'd like to move 2 meetings of the Health and Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny Committee. You have before you the meetings of the 3rd of September and the 1st of October from pages 75 to 92. I would make no comment, just hope that you've read them because there's some interesting stuff in there, and ask for them to be approved. Thank you.
I can't see any indication, so we'll move on to item 4, Health and Wellbeing Board, 93 to 106, presented by myself. Anything on there? I don't see anybody. I'll move to, can we agree that? Agreed. Audit Committee, pages 107 to 114. Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Moving the minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on the 25th of September, as set out on page 107 to 114. Just draw members' attention to the top of page 109, where I refer to the potential of an extra meeting to sign off the accounts. But unfortunately, it looks like that will, touch wood, not take place till the normal meeting, the 27th of November, because the external auditors have still not finalised the report and provided the information that we need.
Okay. Any questions on audit? See nobody? Agreed? Agreed. Right, 6, Brexit and Devolution Working Group, pages 115. Councillor Jackson.
I'm just happy to present those minutes. Thank you.
Anything on devolution? Yes, Councillor Dickinson.
Just from myself and Councillor Dungworth's participation, it was nice to see that the council's website was updated with some Northumberland information for people following that meeting, so we thank you for taking those comments on board.
Thank you.
That's probably the last nice thing I'll say today.
Okay, so you agree that? Right, now let's get to the motions. Get this done very quick time. Councillor Flux, motion number 1.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to put this extremely important motion to Council. Political discourse in this country, and it pains me to say this county, has sadly reached a depressing low. It loads me to raise an individual political blog, for no doubt they wallow in the publicity. But on one blog this weekend, a headline asking, "Are these motions hate crimes?" towards my motion and Councillor Roughhead's motion was published. This is on a blog of political commentary in Northumberland. It is perhaps one of the most vile, disgusting and offensive pieces written. Like a true bully, the author hides behind anonymity. And I've no doubt it's not a person in here, but it's somebody linked to the political circles in this county. What message do articles like this send to the Jewish people, both resident in Northumberland or who might wish to take up our amazing tourism offer? Simply for us to confirm our adoption of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism is likened by some as a hate crime. As such, this tells me that this motion is needed now more than ever. It shames me that such raw hatred and anti-Semitism is present here in Northumberland today. Chair, I've been in this chamber long enough to know that an amendment may be forthcoming. I hope any amendment does not water down this important motion beyond recognition. I have not sought to attack any government post, past or present, or any political party. My motivation in this motion is that we present in a cross-party and cross-community manner that Northumberland is a welcoming place to Jewish people, and that anti-Semitism will not be tolerated and will not be ignored. And I present the motion as outlined in the agenda.
Councillor, is that motion seconded, first of all?
I'll second it and reserve the right to speak.
Yeah.
Susan.
All right. Susan.
Councillor Dungworth?
Thank you. I'd like to second the motion. We can debate it if you want, but I think there's complete agreement from the Labour group for this motion, and yeah, no problem. And I agree with everything you say, and I agree with some of the stuff that goes on in the murkier bits of politics in Northumberland being absolutely out of order. And if I could do anything to stop it, I would, but I can't.
Okay, so it's proposed and seconded. Do you want debate?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Thanks. Everybody knows that I hate motions to council because they're a complete and absolute waste of time. Nothing will come of this at all. We know that. We sit here and we argue the toss about things just because it's about trying to get something on a leaflet somewhere that the Labour Party didn't support this or the Tories didn't do that. What I would like to know is, in the first sentence, it says Northumberland County Council wishes to reaffirm. Can you tell me when we affirmed it?
Well, I'm happy to take any advice on that if we've affirmed it previously.
Before you put motions in, you should really think about the words you're going to put on the piece of paper.
I actually, when I've reread the motion, I don't think it's about reaffirming this particular thing. It's about reaffirming this council's abhorrence of racism in any forms. So it's not, we're not reaffirming our commitment to this particular.
Yeah,
it's
sorry,
pedantics, Councillor Reid, I think.
You know, I am the pedant of the highest degree. If at some point we all stood here and said we absolutely condemn racism in any form at all, well, when I don't ever remember us ever saying that. So, you know, I am going to follow my usual line on this. I ain't voting for motions when it's absolutely pointless, regardless of whether the content of it is to be applauded, and regardless of my absolute hatred for racism, or can't think of the other word, it's me heart going. You know, I always try to treat people equally, regardless of race, colour, creed, or anything. And all of us should do that. But I cannot bring myself to vote for something that was, at the start, a jibe at the Labour Party and trying to stir up political hatred in the council.
Right, hang on. Do you want to go first, Liam?
Yeah, just briefly to respond to that particular point. I think there are quite clear policies within the council about treating people equally. We do have an official equality statement, and we do have the members' code of conduct, and there's an officer code of conduct as well, which reinforces that. There's two things here. Firstly, I think that we really need to be clear that we are opening and welcoming to absolutely everyone in this county, and that we do, in all respects, treat people equally. And if there is an issue with that, you need a way of judging people, and this word and this statement in the motion is a mechanism by which our standards committee could judge anyone in the council or working in the county if they kind of strayed from that reality of treating people absolutely equally. We have been asked to do this by the Secretary of State for Housing and Local Government, and he's written to every council right across the country, sorry. So it's not just something that we've invented. We've actually been asked to do this by central government because this is an issue in some of our communities. And I mean, it's been widely reported in the press. There are people from Jewish communities who are seriously worried about being sort of not treated equally and being about persecuted in different ways. And it's actually not, we all agree, it's just not that particular community. It could be any minority community within our county. So I think it is important for us to do this. We've been asked to do it by central government, and I think it's our responsibility to do this, but to put it into practice. And I think we would do that via our standards committee if there was an issue in particular to deal with. So I do support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Flux.
I would take issue that I didn't make a political attack on anyone there. No, it's not based at you, it's based at... No, sorry, sorry, you're just in my eye line, Councillor Dungworth, I do apologise. I'd also point out that I believe that there was an equality statement was passed by this council in 2017. Yes. And maybe a reaffirmation of that.
Okay. Do you want to comment? I have no wishes. Right. I can't see any further debate. Can we all vote for them? So let's, the first, in favour of the motion, please vote. Right, that looks fairly... Right, okay. Those against? Abstention. You refuse to vote.
So it's an abstaining and abstaining.
Oh well. Democratic. That motion's carried. Motion number 2. Councillor Roughhead.
Thanks, Chair. And just to follow on from the point that Councillor Flux was on about the intention behind this motion, there is no hate crime or discord from me towards people of Scotland. I live on the border. I'm a Berwicker. I work with the councillors on the cross-border basis. Me and Councillor Seymour regularly in contact with issues. And in fact, in Berwick, we're half Scottish, half English. So I'd just like to clarify that for the political trolls out there. And I would just present the motion as it reads out there. And anybody who would say that it's not sensible for this council to recognise that the potential threat of an independence referendum from Scotland could pose as potential opportunities or risks for this council, especially its border communities, would be absolutely foolish. And even I'm willing to work with SNP politicians, and whilst on time on Berwick Town Council, we even invited the First Minister of Scotland to come down to a Berwick Town Council meeting to actually talk about cross-border working on how we get later trains from Edinburgh down to Berwick, and obviously that links into the work that Councillor Weymouth and the Morpeth councillors are doing for trains with the Senrog. But as I think I can recall, and Councillor Patterson will be able to verify, she refused to attend. So I'll just present the motion as it is.
Is that seconded? Councillor Thompson, do you wish to speak? No.
No, just as a...
Thank you.
Fine.
Any debate? Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Chair. From the Labour Group's point of view, we've been through this before when the independent referendum took place last time, and officers provided lots of reports, etc., etc. From our point of view, it's just something we'd expect people to do in the council and provide elected members and others with the information. We're more than happy for it to go to the Brexit Devolution and Borderlands Working Group, I think it's called, which is an apt place for it to go. Obviously, we're really pleased to see Councillor Reid's back to normal. The other thing from our point of view is that there are lots of implications for Northumberland, and it was highlighted last time. I do fear for Councillor Rufford, considering he's on the board and now he's led this charge, if you like. He might meet some SNP members in the dark, but never mind. I'm sure he'll survive. But the important thing is that we are provided with the information, and a lot of the information that was done last time round will still be relevant, and there can be updates provided, and that is the best group for it to go to. So the Labour group have no concern over the setting up of this, what's it called again? Oh no, that's the next one. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Right now, thank you. I think we've sort of established much better relations with our neighbours in Scotland just north of the border over the last year or two. And you know, the biggest manifestation of that is in terms of the Borderlands growth deal. £390 million worth of investment in that cross-border area in a 10-year period is unprecedented, and it was only done through really close working between the councils north and south of the border. And that close working could actually be all for nothing, because you know, we've got an election in a few weeks' time, and we've got one kind of well-represented party in Scotland who are absolutely determined to go for independence for Scotland, never mind the cost to their country. I think sort of most sensible people on this side of the border would think, why should they do that and effectively vote to bankrupt their own country, because that's what would happen. No, but and it is a threat to Northumberland, because we never really, you know, it has been considered in the last independence vote what effect it would have. But you know, can we really imagine a country where we have a hard border at the top end of our county, where you actually have to present a passport to get into another country, where goods don't sort of flow in and out because the trade rules will be different? And it will affect our county more than any other county in the country. So it's right for us to be aware of what I see as a real threat to our county, and continue to be aware of that. And who knows what could happen in a few weeks' time. It might be a real threat, and it might not just be words. They might actually end up putting it into action. And I think we need to be aware of that, and we need to take our concerns at that stage to central government, because I think we will need to take some real urgent action as a county council.
Okay. Councillor Dungworth.
Thank you. I'm just a bit concerned about the tone of the debate. Politics is really uncertain at the moment, and different things could lead to different results. And I think, you know, we just need to be careful about use of language like threats and concern. And yeah, I recognise that there would be challenges if Scotland becomes independent from the UK. That would be some way down the road if it happened. And I think what we're doing now, and what we've been doing for years in terms of cross-country, cross-county working together with other local authorities, be they in Scotland or in England, is exactly the right thing to do. And we just need to keep doing that, so that whatever comes down the road, and you know, genuinely, I think we don't know what we'll do, but that we've got those relationships, and those relationships will carry both sides through whatever difficulties there are. So I think we need to just be careful that we're not seen as being insular, and this is about a threat to Northumberland. This is about a threat to the United Kingdom, actually, and has all kinds of connotations then. Let's keep the conversations open, let's keep the discussions open, let's keep keeping those relationships strong.
Right, forgot to talk about Berwick Rangers as well, didn't we? What would happen to them? Anyway, can we move to a vote? I can't say any further. All those in favour of the motion, please show. Anybody against? Right. Motion number, that was carried. Motion number 3. Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move motion number 3. This motion, I think, has a few things that commends it. 1, it's short. 2, it's specific and local to us, and not cut and paste from some union or campaign page. And 3, for all aficionados of pedantry, there is actually something that comes out of this motion if we decide to pass it, and that is to establish the commission, Climate Change Commission, which will be a group of partners with this council to actually keep the council's climate action plan going, to maintain it, because we have made an amazing start, and I'll name Councillor Sanderson for leading this. You know, he has done a sterling job. You know, not just talk. We've actually got real proposals, as members will be aware. You know, we have been recognised by Friends of the Earth, no less, as the greenest council in the North East, which is a great achievement. We've significantly cut our carbon. We're going to have extra charging points for cars across the county. Even at the site, we're going to have solar charging. We're working on recycling. We are going to plant 1 million trees to carbon offset in the county. We are doing so much good work, and what we need to do is firstly recognise it, raise awareness of it by recognising it, but keep it going. And that's why I commend this motion, because if we, by passing this motion, achieve something, which is create this commission will have an ongoing job of working with our partners and keeping the climate change plan on track. It's not just window dressing, it's not just for one-off, it's a long-term plan, and it needs to be monitored and encouraged and developed long-term, and that's why we need a structure in order to achieve that, and that is why I commend this motion this morning.
This
afternoon even.
Councillor Oliver seconded. Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased that you're not surprised that somebody will make an amendment to this. And I would like to put my amendment. It's a bit sad that you didn't read yours out instead of giving a political kind of speech. My amendment is: this council applauds the work of all successive administrations in dealing with and leading with the way the green agenda for Northumberland. Given the proactive approach taken by this council over recent years, all members' support for the creation of a climate change commission which will engage with other partners in the delivery of the council's climate change plan. Thank you.
Is that seconded? Seconded. Councillor Grimshaw.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. What I would like to...
Hang on, yes, we are debating the amendment. It's been seconded.
Yes, but I'd just like to say that, you know, in debating the amendment, the fact is that I completely agree with Councillor Gallagher's sentiments, because this actually started under the previous administration. So, you know, I can't get over the fact that, you know, it seems to be now, because we're coming into a party political debate again, that it just all of a sudden happened with the climate change. Because, I mean, we had a lot of things under the last administration with regard to this. We started this off. So I take umbrage of the fact that, you know, you're taking all the credit for this. Indeed, you shouldn't be, because it was the last administration who started it all. And I would just like that put in writing, please, as well. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dickinson.
True to form, what we'd expect from Councillor Bourne is a very narrow motion, a motion that's designed to cause upset and a little bit of fluff in here for him to use his usual words and shake everybody up a little bit. But in actual fact, the amendment is a more accurate motion, and that is applauding the work of the current administration, applauding the work of the previous administration and the administration before that. Councillor Bourne, in his own opening remarks, referred to more charging points and more this, that and the other. Well, unless they were there in the first place, you can't have more. They were put in by the previous administration, and they were done by Councillor Reid's administration before that. Climate change hasn't started since the summer. The council hasn't been awarded anything or recognised by Greenpeace because of something, or Friends of the Earth because it started in the summer. I mean, for goodness sake, what a load of twaddle.
What about the trees? I have Councillor Dungworth.
Sorry, he's just stolen my thunder to some extent. Yeah, I mean, this is about making politics out of something that I thought we'd agreed in this chamber was above politics and that was cross-party. It's about point scoring on the eve of a general election campaign starting, and I am really disappointed. I had genuinely thought we'd moved past this. This is about the work that has been done over successive administrations, about recognising the challenges ahead, trying to gear ourselves up so that as a council we can deliver services that reduce our carbon footprint, but also acting as community leaders. And I would ask that you take the amendment in the spirit in which it is meant, which is about this is us all signed up to this together and working together on it, and we get on with the rest of the business on this agenda.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. Can I just say that obviously climate emergency has been, it's a new word, and it's something that all of us would agree with. However, it is being jumped on all over the place. Fine, because if that means action is happening, it is. I would actually endorse what Councillor Dickinson said, because at the meeting the other night, which we had, there was a graph of the actual changes in the work that the council had done over the years, and there was a considerable amount of work done since before 2013. So this has been ongoing, and it's a massive changes were made over the last 6 years. What I would like to say is that we've got a Hexham Commission going, which is brilliant, which I don't know if you know about, Councillor Kennedy. That's really moving forward. We've got one in Riding Mill. Not a commission, but it's a working group. We're actually delivering lots of things elsewhere. We've also got North of Tyne, have got a commission. And so, well, it was in the papers today. Sorry, Councillor Jackson. They've got a commission or they've declared emergency, right? One or the other. But for goodness sake, can we work together? We're not just we're little, Northumberland's small, but we're big, but we're part of the North East. And by working together, that would be helpful. But the other issue I have is, which I've got more concerns about, is the impact at the present time. If nobody's had flooding who lives in the rural areas and hasn't had complaints, I've got water coming down everywhere. I've got block gullies. I've got streets that have got leaves all over. And there are not enough services to handle or deal with the issues caused by the amount of rain that is coming down, certainly on hillsides. It's coming down the Tyne Valley. It's up, I think, probably up. Councillor Riddle have problems. I know that. Everybody's got problems. But what we need is some more money in, because although we're going forward, looking forward to emergency crisis, or crisis whatever, what we're not doing is dealing with the impact. And we need funding now to deal with the impact. We need more funding on the ground to deal with the impact. Block games, block gullies, more flooding, more water, more ice, more etc. And people are not happy about it.
Councillor Swithenbank, but my assistant seems to be dishing out water everywhere for everybody. So, Councillor Swithenbank. No, you grab that one, and then we go to Jeff Reid after Councillor Swithenbank. Microphone to Councillor Swithenbank, please.
Chair, you mentioned the word trees. And when people put together motions for debate here, it would be useful to either ask the older members of staff or indeed examine records of what the history is. When I came on here in '77, the Lord Ridley's led administration of Conservatives and Independents had a full-scale tree planting programme going. They had a tree planting unit that was based at Cramlington. They'd inherited that from a previous Labour administration in '67. It continued through the 80s into the 90s. And as a child, I remember looking out of my bedroom window and being able to count 8 or 9 pit heaps. You could stand in the same place now, you wouldn't see one. Government money, reclamation schemes, our tree planting unit, and on some of these sites, something like 250,000 trees would be planted on a single site. This county, under a variety of administrations, planted millions of trees, And in southeast Northumberland, that when I started working the coal mines in 1960, had something like 42 or 43 coal mines. It now has none. You can barely find a trace of them. And this council, this county council, with the assistance of government grants from both Labour and Conservative governments, has transformed southeast Northumberland. They planted millions of trees, and it was over successive administrations, Labour-led, Conservative-led, even Lib Dem-led. And we should take pride in what this council has achieved.
Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Chair. Look, we're talking about the amendment first, aren't we?
Yeah.
So I can't bring up all of this stuff. If only I voted for motions, I would support Councillor Gallagher's...
As a Democrat, you don't vote.
Yeah, well, here we are. It's your God-given right not to vote. Remember that. We don't get fined like the Australians do. Not turning up is also democracy. Anyway, if I was going to vote, I would support Councillor Gallagher. And I would also just echo what Councillor Swithenbank said about trees. Lord Armstrong planted 8 million trees in the hills above Rothbury, and it actually changed the climate of Rothbury. So just beware what you wish for.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Chairman. I may as well say something while I'm here. I'm just a bit surprised because I thought the motion was pretty straightforward. I know the word Conservative appears in it, and this probably causes a little difficulty in some quarters. If it was a Labour administration, the word Labour would appear in it, but it isn't. I think it would. However, what we're talking about is actually a factual statement. What has happened since then has been quite remarkable and creditable. That's all we're asking. Well, the amendment is asking us to change that. Why does that need changing? I just don't see why it needs changing. I do acknowledge, we're not saying that naught was ever done by previous administrations. We're not saying that. We're saying that this has actually happened since the climate change emergency was actually declared. Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you very much. All I can say in response to the platitudes from the Labour members that have spoken is that it is one thing to say that you want to do this together in this building. It's quite another thing to stop malicious, nasty, smeary, horrible things appearing online, talking about Councillor Grimshaw even, and her good ideas about planting trees, and how our ideas are very stupid. So platitudes are fine in here, but actually, when it comes down to it, we're talking about a motion that I'd like to just explain a little bit more. Back in June,
Glenn, we're on the amendment. I'm sorry.
Can we not? No, it's all the same.
Right. So, in terms of the amendment, in terms of the amendment, all I would say
There's no
about
point of order. Keep going. Keep going.
In terms of the amendment.
That does not mean you have the right to speak. It's not in the rules. Continue.
In terms of the amendment, whilst I appreciate that there were actions taken by previous administrations in many forms, what we are talking about here today is something entirely different. And that's all I would say about the amendment. I will come back, if I may, to talk about the motion in a moment.
Right. Councillor Grimshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's just to say I've been named, and I don't understand what it means about I've been on social media about trees. I just don't know where that's come from. I haven't certainly posted anything on there, so...
Councillor Jackson, we are talking about the amendment.
Right, and the amendment is not significantly different to the original motion, but there is a real point to the motion, and that is because the amount of action and the amount of activity to deal with this climate change issue has increased absolutely exponentially in this county council in the last 2 years. And that is the point of this motion. We have done all sorts of public engagement. I'm talking on the motion. and the amendment, because the amendment is not significantly different to the motion in my mind. And I'm trying to explain, if you give me half a minute, why we've brought this motion. And it's to demonstrate the step change that there's been within this county council in the last 2 years of our Conservative administration. And there's been this vast call to declare a climate change emergency, and that has only just happened recently within the last year or two. We've responded to that, we've grabbed the agenda, we've responded to that, and that's why we're seen as the council leading on the climate change agenda in the north of England, if not in the country. We've got national government talking to us now in a way that actually has never happened before, because we can demonstrate to other areas what a step change can make. And there's been some sort of accusation about politics creeping in there, and politics is significant because we all argue about different things. And if we had a Labour group that was really serious about climate change agenda, and if we had a Labour group who have been calling to be on the working group, yet they can't even be bothered to turn up to the working group. So that's
not a point of order.
That's how serious that is.
It's not a point of order.
It's a point of order. It's referenced that
Your members did not turn up.
It's not a point of order. It's not a point of order. I've just been given the advice.
If you can't,
no, you don't.
If you can't, don't come moaning to us as a Conservative administration if you can't even be bothered to turn up to the working group. And you've got in the North of Tyne Combined Authority, fair enough, we've got a Labour mayor who makes a big thing about climate change on his agenda. Well, what's he done about it? He's made a big noise about it, but there's actually no real action. But here we are, a Conservative administration of Northumberland County Council. We've got an action plan. We've got a clear plan about how we're going to cut carbon emissions significantly down to zero by 2030. More than that, we've engaged with the general public. We've engaged with all of the pressure groups who are interested in this. And we're the first administration to ever do that joined up thinking for the county. And we're the first administration to actually propose this Climate Change Commission. And again, the commission is a real action. We're going to engage experts to help us as a county and as a county council to meet those zero emissions targets by 2030. And that's what it's all about. It's about real action and not just talk that we hear from other political parties. And that's why I think we should actually have the credit for doing what we're doing on behalf of the whole county. Thank you.
I want to get to the vote on the amendment. I'm going to ask Councillor Gallagher to reread his amendment. I want to get the amendment.
I believe this is my chance just to have a say on things that have been commented on before I read this amendment.
You can have a little...
I think... Sorry, wait a minute. Let me just grow up here, right? This is about the whole of Northumberland. It's not about party political gains or wins or anything like that. And we're not trying to grab any agendas. You know, we're all trying to work for our residents that we've got in Northumberland. And I think sometimes you miss that. But we here, from this side, the Labour side, we understand, we see it. We understand that we've got to be here, a voice for the people. Now, you're trying to make on that things have established just in the summer. This has been a long route to get to where we are. And it's a journey in itself. And the journey still isn't over. And unless we all work together, it's never going to happen. Because you're always going to start squabbling or fighting. It's about time we work as a group. Because that's what the people want us to do. I'll go at the amendment, and it's been said a number of times that it's not far away from what you say. So can we just for once grow up and let us try and do something for this county? The amendment. This council applauds the work of successive administrations in dealing with and leading with the way on the green agenda in Northumberland. Given the proactive approach taken by this council over recent years, all members support the creation of the Climate Change Commission, which will engage with all key partners in the delivery of the council's climate change plan. Please, please take it sensibly. Stop playing the games anymore. Thank you very much.
I'll go to the vote. All those in favour of that amendment?
Can we have a name vote on that, please?
As enough people. I need a fifth of the membership. Those in favour of a named vote? Yeah. We'll have a named vote. Okay, so ready for this, Liam?
Yes, Chairman, thank you.
So this is for Councillor Gallagher's amendment. So it's simple in favour or against. Okay? Microphone, please.
Councillor Armstrong. Against. Councillor Bawn. Against. Councillor Bennon. Against. Councillor Bowman.
In favour.
Councillor Bridget.
For.
Councillor Campbell.
For.
Councillor Castle.
Against.
Councillor Cessford.
Against.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Crosby.
For.
Councillor Dale. For. Councillor Daly.
Against.
Councillor Davy. Grant Davy.
For.
Councillor Susan Davy. Councillor Dickinson.
For.
Councillor Dodd.
Against.
Councillor Dunbar.
Against.
Councillor Dungworth.
For.
Councillor Flux.
Against.
Councillor Gallagher.
For.
Councillor Gibson.
Against.
Councillor Gobin.
For.
Councillor Grimshaw.
For.
Councillor Happel.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hummer.
Against.
Councillor Horncastle.
Against.
Councillor Hutchison.
Against.
Councillor Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Lang. Councillor Laurie.
Against.
Councillor Laurie. Councillor Ledger.
For.
Councillor Murray.
Against.
Councillor Nesbitt.
For.
Councillor Oliver. Councillor Parry. Councillor Patson.
Against.
Councillor Purvis.
For.
Councillor Quinn.
Against.
Councillor Reid.
Not voting.
Councillor Renner Thompson. Councillor Richards. Councillor Riddle.
Against.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Councillor Roughhead.
Against.
Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Seymour. Councillor Sharp. Councillor Simpson. Councillor Stewart. Councillor Stowe. Councillor Swinburne. Councillor Swithenbank. Councillor Wallace. Councillor Thorne. Thank you. Councillor Watson. Councillor Wearmouth. Councillor Webb. Councillor Wilson. Thank you, members.
Give us half a minute and we'll add the scores.
There were three of them. But they don't know how.
Whether or not Councillor Reid challenges that. 429, the amendment, against the amendment 31, and I reckon one.
I see it did not vote. The amendment falls. 29 votes to 31, with 1 did not vote. So we move on to the motion.
Councillor Sanderson.
I'm not quite sure why we had to have a, if it wasn't a party political move, why we had to have a name vote, but I'll pass on. What you need to do, with respect, is you need to read what this motion says. It says, the council applauds the progress made. And it's progress that I'm talking about today. Sorry, shall I keep going?
Yeah.
So what we're talking about here is the progress and what we do next, and why we would like all the council to come with us and agree that the next big step should be to invite a commission to keep an eye and to help us and to challenge us on the next phase of the work. May I just remind those who may not know what we've been doing over the last 3 or 4 months. We have taken a public meeting in Morpeth.
Keep going.
Yeah. Sorry, shall I just keep going, or do you...
Yes, keep going.
Right, in the last 3 or 4 months, what has happened is we've had a public meeting. We've had a very good session with King Edward High School. We've had an all-member briefing. We are now going to go out to all the local area councils to explain the work and to explain the draft action plan that we've built up. We will then go to scrutiny. We will then take this final work to Cabinet, and then it will go to Council, where we hope you will support the action plan then. Meanwhile, the 5 key thematic themes, which I'm sure you will all know what they are, but the 5 thematic themes, those working groups will begin work this month, and they will feed into that. We will also be coming forward with a number of other partners to give us some input into this action plan, which will be complete, I hope, in time for it to get passed by Council after it's been to Cabinet. In that, there will be some specific actions. There will be talk of tree planting. There will be talk of more electronic vehicle charging points. There'll be talk of more cycling and walking, which my colleague is leading on extremely well. There will be more on public transport and how we can use the subsidy, the amount of money we put into public transport in a more imaginative way to encourage more people to take a bus or take a train rather than taking their car. And we will be forming a new web platform which will allow much better interaction between the public and ourselves. In addition to that, we will continue the dialogue with young people, with town and parish councils and all the organisations in the county. The Climate Change Commission will be made up primarily of academics from universities and also from business, energy and industrial strategy. They will keep us right on what we are going to be doing, and I think that will be a huge step forward, and I think I'm right in saying this is the first such commission that we would like you to agree with us forming in any local government so far at this stage. However, I would like to thank my colleagues in Cabinet for being incredibly supportive of all the work that we've done, and I would like to thank various members of the Council for the work that they've done and the encouragement they've given to us. However, most important of all, I would like to thank the officers who've worked on this, because they have had to pick up a piece of work in a very short amount of time and bring it to where we are now. And without that help and without that encouragement and devotion to their work, we would not be where we are now. So this is what we're talking about in this motion. This is what we've done. We would now like you to agree that the next stage should be to form this commission and keep the progress and the process going as we have been. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dungworth.
Thank you. I just think the administration have been shown up to be pretty petty in all of this. We don't disagree with the Commission. We don't disagree with anything in this motion, apart from the Conservative Party in this room trying to take credit for everything that's been done. Yeah. Councillor Dickinson talked earlier about how you referred to more. You've talked about more there. It is building on work that's already done. It's building on those charge points. It's building on those solar farms. It's building on that work with communities. It's building on the Port of Blythe and the work around renewable energies. It is building on all of that. We will not be rejecting this motion because you wouldn't take the amendment, But I think it's a really sad indictment of where you seriously are when you will not accept something to take out the word Conservative and not claim all the credit for yourselves. You talked about reaching out and making this cross-party. You are the ones that are putting the blocks up continually about this, and I just think you don't look very good here today. But we will be supporting the motion, because obviously we're supporting it. We've made that very, very clear from the word go.
Councillor Bridget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to support the motion. I would have supported the Labour one, but I'm happy to support the Conservative one as well, regardless. I would just like to offer a point of clarification, because it's been held up as a shining example of what we can do in this county, and that's the great Northumberland forest that's been advertised so much in the press. Whilst it is an absolutely fantastic idea, and I fully support it, you're looking at planting 1,000 acres, maybe a bit more with 1 million trees. Between the 3 largest divisions in this county, which is the Wooler Division, the Rothbury Division and the Bellingham Division, we've got over 200,000 acres of forestry anyway. Kielder replants 2.5 million trees annually. So those 1 million trees are very much a drop in the ocean. So if this climate change panel or whatever is going to be convened, we've got to look seriously at how we can use the land that we own as a council to further improve and plant new trees and new forests. But there's also a potential opportunity by bringing partners in from the Ministry of Defence, because between the Bellingham Division and the Rothbury Division, we've got 150,000 acres of MOD land up there. Much of it is the parts that aren't used for the firing area is completely unused, and could be used to improve training, but could be used to put extra trees in there as well. So I would really encourage that you bring the MOD on board on whatever panel is part of that. The final point I would make is that, yes, we've got 8.5 million trees that were planted by Lord Armstrong in Rothbury, but I wasn't aware, and it may have changed the climate. I'm not 100% sure, but I know the member for Plessy is a little bit older than me, but I don't know if he knows what the climate was like in the 1860s before it was planted.
Councillor Grimshaw. Hang on, use the mic.
Thank you, Chair. Well, if you don't mind, Chair, I would also like to thank my colleagues in the previous 2 administrations for all the hard work that they did with climate change. So, I mean, if the Conservatives can take the credit now for what's going on now, we can take credit what was started under previous administrations. So I'd like to thank the officers, all our colleagues, on all the hard work they did as well. So thank you to my colleagues for starting this off. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Jackson. And Councillor Beale.
Yeah, just in reply to the good words of Councillor Bridget, just to reassure you, we are actually talking to the Ministry of Defence for their particular land, and the 1 million trees is actually just a start. The ambition is much greater, and the ambition would cover a considerable amount of the land that you're talking about. We've actually been asked by national government to form what's called a Northumberland Forestry Partnership, which would include the Ministry of Defence, Natural England and Forestry England, and ourselves actually as the convening authority of the County Council. So we're going to make real change there.
Councillor Deal.
Thank you. I'm pleased about that, about the bringing all the forestry people together, because we have woodland, but it's an exercise that needs doing for future. Otherwise, the continual replanting, etc., needs to be addressed. Can I just say to you, one thing I would like to say to Councillor Sanderson is the Change Commission will engage key partners. Can you just add all in? Because we've got some really, really good key partners. Hexham have done a tremendous amount of work, and from that we've had offshoots. We've had meetings which have come down via Hexham and the Hexham people. That's into Riding Mill, and Riding Mill have grasped that. I don't know if anybody else is. Are you all involved in having meetings, parishes being involved with them? But we are. I know some parishes won't, but some of us are actually doing things, and if the parishes won't be involved, we're trying to planting trees on Saturday. But what I would like to say is, please, when you're looking at the information you obtain from the Commission, can it be a sharing exercise? because that information is very important and it's costly. The Northumberland University, if they are giving their time free, but if they are giving that time free and giving you information, please will you share it? Share it with everybody. Don't keep it to yourself. It's their ability to give the information. And we need to share that ability because actually it will help everybody. So can I have that from you, Councillor Sanderson, that you will share the information to enable everybody else to have that information at hand so they themselves can make a difference?
Councillor Reid.
Thank you. You had a golden opportunity here this afternoon to get everybody to agree that this was the right thing to do, and you know, you were about to create a talking shop with key partners who you haven't actually identified at all. Rather, Councillor Sanderson had a rather random list. It would have been interesting to see on here how that key partners is actually going to be collated together. Who are they? You know, somebody mentioned Blythe Harbour and all the rest of those things, but what I heard here was academics. Well, what you're doing is you're creating you're just about to vote to create a talking shop, which will go nowhere and do nothing. What you need is action. Action. That you know, not an action plan. Strike out the word plan and put action. What of the Conservative administration actually, what actually has the leading councillors done to attack climate change? Are any of you going to give up your BMWs and your four-wheel drive Range Rovers and buy yourself electric Leafs? Because I tell you what, I haven't seen any of that yet. What you're doing is, what you're doing is you're setting something up, and you're going to expect other people to pay for it, and you're expecting other people to have to do the things that this action plan of yours is going to say the council has to do, and none of you lot appear to be able to do anything. Where is your commitment to get the bus here?
There's no bus for me to get to here.
Well, then the point of that is, then why isn't there a bus service?
There's no demand.
Why are we spending money not providing the public services and the public bus service that people in Northumberland need? This is just, this is why I never vote for motions. It's just absolute tosh from start to finish, and the only reason you put it in there was to say, oh, the concern is, you know, I can see it in all of the election leaflets now. The Conservatives are going to do this. Well, it's a complete and absolute waste of time. It's going to take you 6 months to get these academics to come and tell you what you should be doing, when you know in your heart of hearts what you should be doing is action. Not a plan, but let's see some bloody action.
Yeah. What? Right. Councillor Homer.
I am all right now, by the way. Thank you, Chair. I just want to speak just for a couple of seconds on one small part of this, which is about cycling and walking. And before I do, I just want to take you back to this motion that we're looking at here, which says, this council applauds the progress made by this administration. So I just want to talk to you for a few seconds about that progress. So let's look at the Northumberland Cycling and Walking Board. It went through a period of inactivity. That board has now been reignited, revitalised, call it what you want. And there are partners on that board. It is not just the County Council. It's Northumberland National Park. It's Sustrans. It's Natural England. It's Active Northumberland. It's Public Health. There are a huge number of partners on that board. And very recently, we have created a new, I'm not going to call it strategy because apparently I'm not allowed to call it a strategy, but a new vision for cycling and walking in Northumberland. And cycling and walking has many benefits. And one big part of those benefits are this green agenda. What I'm really proud to say is that that board is fully behind that statement of importance for cycling and walking in this county. But we're not just doing that, because anybody can make a statement, anybody can make a strategy. It's about delivering on that. So this board and our officers here at Northumberland County Council are doing a fantastic job of coming up with a delivery plan that we will be able to present to you in the new year. Because we need to be able to measure success on how many more people we can get cycling and walking in this county and making more journeys, not relying on cars. So we're committed to doing that. Running alongside of that, we've also been looking at cycling and walking infrastructure plans. So if you're from Berwick, you know that already. Bedlington, Ashington, Morpeth, Ponteland. We are working on this. So we are making a really strong commitment to the importance of getting more people cycling and walking in this county. So if you want to talk about progress, this administration is delivering on progress. Thank you.
I'll take Councillor Hutchinson. I can't take Councillor Daly. I've already spoken. I've been reminded of Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I'm getting really sick of this. It happens every time you have full council. I applaud what the Labour did for climate change in the past. I applaud what the Liberals did for climate change in the past. We've moved on from there, and Councillor Homer is very right in what she says. The wording in this is the progress since the summer. I think what's upsetting you all is the word conservative. It's really this council. So let's get voting and forget all this and let's get it done.
Councillor Riddle.
Likewise, I wouldn't denounce anything that's been done in the past. I would applaud it. I think it is about progress. It's about the hyper speed that this is now being driven at, and that officers have really grasped this with the cabinet member and really progressed it. You know, just this morning I was talking about the housing revenue account with officers. And, you know, I was saying on there, if there's any slack, I want more done on energy efficiency, on more insulation and things like that. It's really focusing people's attention. You know, there's the fire stations where I put the ground source heat pumps in, etc., etc. It's not just about planting more trees. We've got to be careful here because, you know, planting trees on deep peat is a big mistake. So they've got to be planted in the right place. And actually, to plant them on arable ground is actually better than planting them on ground that livestock are grazing. So, you know, there's a lot of knowledge to be used here, and to form a commission is exactly the right way forward, to get the experts and to actually get the action in the right place.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. Can I take Gallagher? Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering. I'm just wondering. I was at a meeting just a couple of weeks ago with some of my colleagues for bikes and roadway and whatever it was. Where was the top table? There was only four Labour, so we're concerned because it's part of our town. So nobody else must think about what I mean.
What was the meeting?
It was for new tracks for bikes and tracks, and there wasn't one of us there. It was all us. So we care for Ashington, we care for Blythe, but there was nobody else there, I mean.
No.
And you cannot. Can I ask one more question? I used to be on the national parks with Glen years ago, and we went to the Elsen village. Sorry? Well, it is nice. And we had to decide these houses, what to be built. And I suggested, if we knock these houses down, Glenn, you're going to have to remember, because you said it's a good idea, but nothing happened. All these fantastic, beautiful trees. We're going to knock them down and put a few houses on. And I suggested, Leif, take a few down, and we'll build some, get some more houses, trees elsewhere. And you did that, and you stopped it. You wouldn't let us do it, Glenn. Can you remember? Because I can remember very clearly. So, well, you're saying you're a man for trees, you're a man for note.
I want to try and wrap this up. I've got two more. I know. I'm We've just had an amendment. We've been through an awful lot. I've got Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you very much for recognising again, Chair. This is an important issue. Chair, are you interested?
Very.
Look, the reality is this is really important for Northumberland. It's not about political gain anymore. It's sad that the vote went... Sorry, are you tired or... Because there was a big sigh there. Look, the reality is this is for Northumberland residents. We've got to get away from this. I'm proud of my... I'm sorry, firstly, of bringing this amendment. This is the first amendment that I've ever brought to this council, and it's had a fantastic debate. But it's had an eye-opening debate as well, of where we are and where our future goes. And Glenn, you're doing a good job, that's fine, and we are working to you. This wasn't your motion, by the way, it was Councillor Bones. So the reality is, my Labour colleagues here will vote against or vote with your amendment, just to show our commitment to climate change. So please, let us all work together. I'm begging you, because the residents of Northumberland are looking at us all. This is our time, and don't waste it, please.
Councillor Webb.
Chair, I think it's point of order. I'm not to make another amendment to this. All I want is to change the word.
Can we do that? You can move an amendment, but you know, PERDA starts at midnight.
All I wanted to do is take the word conservative out and put this and previous administrations to the climate emergency.
It's exactly the same as the previous amendment, and I'm not taking it. I want to move. I want to move, and I want to go to Councillor Bourne to sum up. Sanderson first. Yeah, sorry, I'm being told legally you've spoken. You cannot speak. Yeah, you cannot speak. I've stopped Councillor Bourne.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I have to cut Sanderson off.
I'm going to Grant.
I'd just like to move the motion as written. We've had some fun and games and some vapours about the word Conservative. I know it upsets you. We've obviously discovered what's to go with leaflets. I think the word tosh and Lib Dem might appear in some leaflets. The idea that the motion as written is somehow inaccurate or biased is not the case. If you read the motion, it is about not what happened in the past, and there has been actions by previous administrations. What there hasn't been until now, until this climate emergency, is joined up action. There has not been a council climate change action plan. That is what the climate emergency we declared in the summer. The Conservative administration, I know it upsets you, but it was the Conservative administration and not a previous administration that declared the climate emergency. They have done a specific thing at a specific time to join together lots of strands. Some strands are new, some strands are ongoing for many years. But what is new, what has to be recognised as new and recognised as an action of this administration is to create the climate change emergency, to create the action plan, and that which they have done. What I am asking you today to support the motion, to add to that, is to create the Climate Change Commission, which will police this plan going forward, this joined up new plan going forward, so that we can actually make progress as a county in tackling this issue. So therefore I'd like to commend the motion as written and request that you support it. Thank you.
All right, all those in favour, please show. I think we can take a hand. Anybody against? Any abstentions? It's your democratic right. Right, that's those done with. Item 10. Reports of the Service Director, Strategic Commissioning and Finance. Item 1, Council Tax Support Scheme, pages 121 to 124. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. This is a requirement to bring the council tax support scheme to council each year. We aren't proposing to make any changes to the existing scheme, and that existing scheme, as you'll remember from last year, only applies to working age claimants. There's a forecast collection rate of 83%. Collection to the 31st of August, which is the period for which we have the latest figures, was 40.4% versus 41.9% last year. The support networks in place that we talked about last year are still in place, namely the NET scheme in particular. And so I propose that we accept the scheme as it currently stands and take it forward for another year.
Okay, I've got Councillor Dungworth.
Thank you. It won't come as any surprise to know that I will be opposing this. We are firmly of the belief that there should be a council tax support scheme that was in place before last year. In Blythe Valley alone, over 3,000 children are living in poverty at the moment. Families are hit by universal credit already on top of this. There is £126,000 in rent arrears, and of that, about 30% is down to people, directly down to people in universal credit, and this administration is still not making a commitment not to evict those people because of that. We have got families living in really, really dire circumstances in this county, and the least we can do is offer that rebate. And we will oppose it this year, we will oppose it next year, and when we're back in power the year after, we will reverse this.
Councillor Grimshaw.
Well, as you know, Chair, that I've always been against this scheme, and we were proud because, I mean, we're told that we're one of 2 councils to actually keep this in situ, and I think even if we're the only one, we should be proud of that because of the figures. And I know I'm going to go on a little bit here because in Wansbeck, the children that are in poverty is 34%. The figure shown between 2017 and 18, that's a total of 5,909 children deemed as meeting the criteria. In Bothell alone, my ward, 21%. Food banks in Wansbeck in the last 12 months have provided 19,600 days of food to those in the greatest need, an increase of 46% on the situation a year ago. And I cannot support this absolutely disgusting, council tax recommendation, because those in most need is what you're taking off people, and that you're spending millions and millions on, yes, it's within the budget, on putting a canopy on the front of this building, and when you could be putting £1 million back into those in the greatest need in our area. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dickinson.
Oh, thanks, Chair. I've calmed down a little bit now. Hopefully this doesn't wind us up a bit. I made the point at the time, Northumberland, Durham, there are unique places in terms of their rurality and the challenges that has to working and unworking families, and the additional costs that are associated to, let alone just travel around the county, but access services and other things. Hundreds of families, households in my patch have been affected by this, and I've heard various stories, let alone talking to the food bank in Amble, Widgerton and other places about the support they've been providing to families affected by this. And it won't come to anyone's surprise that the Labour group will be voting against this recommendation, and that we are doing so on the basis that our constituents, and not the ones just affected by this, but the constituents who work and live next door and who are paying full council tax but see what some of this is doing to other families, actually want us to raise this again. And it is our job to represent not only those that can't speak for themselves or can't articulate some of the damage that this policy is doing to their families, but to be highlighted by other members of the community who don't and have never received any of this support, and be asked to bring this forward again is just really telling to the consequences of this policy, which is what the Labour group said would happen at the time of its introduction.
I can't see any more speakers. Councillor Wilson.
I represent Central Ward in Ashton. Now, Central Ward was one of the most prosperous wards and parts of the towns in the county, because everybody was working the pit, all had a good wage. But you know what's happening? Pits were closed, people were doing their jobs. We've got a few figures here. 29% of kids are in dire need. Dire need. This is of teachers, it's not just of us. Another one, 36% after taking the money's left are in dire need. Now, if anybody's got a conscience in here, you just throw this out and say, hey, we're not doing that. We'll go back the other way. Because you mustn't have any conscience, that's all I can say. And I didn't get into leaflets and all.
Councillor Simpson, and then Councillor Parry and Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, short and sweet, my ward of Newbigin Central and East has the highest child poverty in Northumberland of 46%. There's no way I could support this. Thank you.
Councillor Parry.
Yes, Chair, I represent the Hurst ward of Ashington. I've got similar figures. If the housing cost, it's 33%. And just before housing cost, sorry, at the housing cost, it's 39%. And mine is just a marginal one. It's worse than mine. It's a sad situation.
Councillor Jackson.
Right, yeah, thank you. I didn't think that we were going to have to rerun the whole debate a year on. The idea was just to, and what we promised last year was that would just be a one-off, and we would do that year on year without proposing any increase at all, and we're not doing that. We're bringing this here today because it's a statutory duty to do that. But I think some of the highlights of the debate from last year do need a public airing, because we've heard the Labour Party position from Northumberland. But I do think that you want to talk to your colleagues in the rest of the north of England. We as a county council still have one of the most generous council tax support schemes in the whole of the north of England. So you just talk to your colleagues in other councils up and down the north of England and see how much they charge. And you might have just forgotten what your plans were. The Labour Party's written plans at the end of their administration was to have a 50% charge for council tax for poorer people. You were going to slam your constituents with a 50% charge. Here we're just saying that people should make an 8% contribution on what their council tax would have otherwise been. And we wouldn't have had to do this if we hadn't had to balance the books last year. You lot left us with a deficit to fill, a black hole of £65 million a year, and we've had to do every single thing possible to put this county council's finances back on track. We've done that. This is just a small part of that, and I think the experience of last year is that it's a reasonable thing to do, and that was the general consensus of people that I've talked to. But you want to look into your souls and ask yourselves what the Labour Party is doing in the rest of the north of England. They're hammering their people in their poorer communities. We're being one of the most generous in the north of England, and I'll say that again.
Councillor Grant Davey.
Thank you, Chair. It was very good to get back to what politics is about in this chamber, where the leader of the Tories, and I'm seeing the Tories in this chamber, opened his mouth and let the wind blow his tongue. Officer, we told you last year that the Labour group would have never ever accepted a motion or any report onto its agenda that cut 50% out of council tax support. Officers may have written those speculatively and may wish to have that sort of figure so they can spend the other stuff, the surplus funding that they would have received on other things, but the Labour group did not and would not have ever accepted that. You're talking an absolute, and I'm going to use the Liberal word here, tosh, because it was completely and utterly not true. And I'll just leave it at that, Chair. I'll not get any worse because I might end up in the same position that poor councillor from the Liberals has been in the last few weeks.
He nearly named it.
Councillor Campbell.
I don't like to say that word, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. It's a bit like the national government. They have spent the last 10 years blaming the last Labour government for everything that's happened in the last 10 years. All the cuts that have been imposed upon poor families throughout Britain, it's blamed on the last Labour government and the fact that they had so much to put right. Now you're following the same path. I find it absolutely disgraceful, and I appealed to you last year and asked you not to go ahead with this. Do you realise there are children growing up in Britain today who know no better other than to live off food banks? The only shopping supermarket they know of is a food bank or a clothes bank, which is now taking off. Now that's not down to any Labour government, it's down to your government, your policies, and that's what's driven the poverty level in this country to such a height. You should be ashamed of yourselves. You're not doing any benefits to the people out there. You may talk about climate change, and that's wonderful. And there's been so much hot air in here all day about climate change. We need to look at the poor and how your party is punishing the poor and making them a scapegoat for everything that's happened. It's an absolute disgrace, and I would appeal to you again to look at this. £8 might not be much to any one of you or any one of us here, but to a family who have nothing, it's a lot of money, and you shouldn't forget that.
Councillor Wearmouth. Councillor Wearmouth.
Thank you, Chair. It's a bit of an unfortunate comparison when you draw comparisons between the mess that was left by the last Labour government, especially at this time, and then compare that to what we had to cope with. There was a letter left by the last Labour government, and it said, "I'm afraid there's no money left." At least they left a letter, because you lot didn't. At least they had the dignity to do that. You know, when you are spending tens of millions of pounds building a people's palace, or a councillor's palace, I should say, in Ashington, you didn't think of the taxpayer then and what you were bringing on them. Yeah? A fraction of the amount is the easy answer, and you'll be able to vote it through in the budget next year. You know, the fact of the matter is, as Councillor Jackson says, you need to go around the North East and give a bit of a lecturing to some of the Labour councils, because this continues to be one of the most generous. And I don't know, we haven't seen the proposals from the only other council that's more generous. Maybe they're changing this year, I don't know. We may see that. But go lecture them. You left us in an absolute mess financially. You can have there's no point of order. You can see it in black and white in the budget. You were going to leave us with 1.5 billion in debt. 1.5 billion for a tiny little council like this.
It's not a point of order. Huh?
And what's more, you did everything. You did everything. You did everything hand in glove with the chief executive. There is no way that you didn't know that there was going to be a cut in the council, in the support. Absolute rubbish. The former chief executive, I have to say, my apologies to the current chief executive. She would never do anything so daft.
Right, come on, let's keep it in order.
I'll leave it at that.
Councillor, I am going to try and give everybody some opportunity, but please, you know, let's show some respect for people. Councillor Webb.
Chair, 10 years ago,
there was 57 food banks. Now there's 400 food banks. There's 94% destitute. That's all in the last few years. And we're just going to add to that.
Councillor Bowman, just pass it along. The three of them want to speak. So.
Just one question. And the question is quite simple. What do you say to that mother who's feeding her children and she gives up 2 days' worth of food herself in order to feed those children? Are you proud of yourself when you add 8% council tax? That's what you've got to consider here. And it's a shame you even thought of the whole idea. What a diabolical state you are.
Can you just pass it along to Councillor Heppel?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I'm going to answer some of the questions or some of the comments made, which are to say that economic with the truth is beyond belief, to be honest. But we're not really, we're talking about Northumberland here, not neighbouring authorities. We do not want this imposition on people who are destitute and in poverty in this county. That's what you're doing. And we really shouldn't be surprised, none of us should be surprised, that the Tories, along with the government, are imposing this on people who are least able to defend themselves and are in poverty and disadvantaged. Paying down the deficit of your Tory government on the poor, that's what you've done, and it's no surprise to me that's what's happening now.
Councillor Bourne, and I want to try and move on after this.
Thank you, Chair. You know, it is, we've had this debate before. You know, it's all very good you to get up and, you know, wring out your consciences and say, oh, well, evil Dickensian Tories, rubbish. Frankly, I am sick of hearing nonsense like this. Basically, the government at the moment, I remember the last Labour government because I was a lot better off before they started making tax. The Tory government has made taxes paid by the higher earners a lot more. They've raised the minimum wage. They've actually done more to get people into jobs. We've got record employment. So all this nonsense about the evil Tories grinding the faces of the poor is just insulting. We have to do realistic things to balance our budget. And we have decided to introduce one of the most generous schemes in the north of England, and yet we have the conscience of the Labour Party seems to stop at the borders of Northumberland. I haven't seen you condemning the wicked, evil devils who run other local authorities run by your party, who have schemes which are swinging in nature compared to this. 8%, and you deny that your plans were to put 50%, but that's the papers. And we can look at the evidence. The only evidence we have are the papers prepared by your administration. You might say that those papers wouldn't have happened. We don't know, but we can just go on evidence. And the evidence is the papers that your administration prepared were going to be a lot worse than this scheme. And that's why they were shown at this debate last time, were they not? Councillor Oliver, I think Councillor Oliver will, I'm sure, make that point. Come on. But, you know, we had to make difficult decisions. We have to balance the budget, and yet we get this outpouring of faux outrage on because this is a regrettable thing. We've had to do it, but we could have done a lot worse. We could have made it a lot higher, but we decided to make the savings across a great range of things, and therefore we decided to protect people who are worse off, and by maintaining one, and I have to keep saying this because you don't need to understand it, one of the most generous schemes in the north of England. And I think we should be proud that we have one of the most generous schemes, and we will not be lectured by a group behind us calling us heartless, calling us people that don't care, because we actually do things that make lives better, rather than just whinge from the sidelines and moan. So I would commend the fact that we get this debate over. We've had it before. We've actually need to get on with running this council properly and actually vote this through. Thank you.
Councillor Dale. Yes. Yes. Come, hang on, Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. Can I just say, I'm actually appalled by the conversation that's been going on. We've all got people I've got people in my ward on deprivation. Predo's got lots of people in deprivation. Hexham House, Ovingham House. Can I just say, my great belief in life is to give every child the same opportunity. Now, when we're talking about 5,009 children living in deprivation, I actually have a conscience, and you've known that for a long time. I do have a conscience about it. I've seen it. I was brought up to have a conscience about it. But one of the things is, you're going on to ask us for the Northumberland Young People's Plan. And the second thing is, number 2, children and young people have their best start in life. Now, can we just, at this period of time, this is pure, it could be political. I don't belong to any political party. I don't want to get involved in it because I actually want to work for the people. Now, can I just say to you, will you go back, consider it, see if you can come up with another option. There's plenty of cuts you can make. You can make cuts all over. I can write them for you without any problem. But I think at this stage, to do what you're actually asking people to do, I didn't agree with it last time, is not to go ahead at the present time.
Right, final speaker, Councillor Nesbitt, and then we'll ask our Councillor Oliver to sum up and we move.
Councillor Bourne talked about getting people into jobs more than ever before. Does he not remember the people in jobs now are working on 0-hour contracts, 11-hour-a-week contracts? I know a lot of people in my ward that are living on contracts, and there's they've got to work, they can't even afford to get on the property ladder. Some of them have got 3 and 4 jobs to keep their heads above water, so don't talk about this to me. The other thing I want to say is going back to the children. Under this administration, my ward has the most deprived, almost 300 places. The list of most deprived wards in the UK, which is between Copen and Croft. I'm getting so angry here. Making it the most deprived in the county. So what are you going to do about that as well? So it all comes under this. The most deprived wards in the county are between Copen and Croft. And that is so damned annoying. And these people that are working now, what they've got to go through now is absolutely ridiculous. They can't even get on the property ladder.
Right, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair.
And I would like to see that we've got a named vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to pick up on a couple of points. The point around what we were shown when we became the administration about the proposals. We were shown something that was a proposal, and I've offered to share it in the past, and nobody's come forward and taken me up on my offer. But I still have that information, so if anybody does want to see it, you're quite welcome to. And there can only be 2 different circumstances. Either, and I know for a fact that the previous Chief Exec and Finance Director of the Council knew about this proposal, whether it was his proposal and his administration didn't know about it, but either you knew about it or you were an administration out of control with a cabinet that wasn't aware of a key policy that was coming forward only 3 months later. 3 months later. So it's one or the other, and I'm quite happy to share that with anybody that wants to come and see it. I would just also like to point out that what we're talking about here, and this is not something we did lightly this time last year, and I made that point then, but we did need to find savings right across council services, right across all activities of the council. This amounts to £6.16 a month to a single person Zone A house. And I appreciate it is affecting people that have the least money, but £16.16 is not a massive amount of money. So we have to put it into perspective. Less than 10% of the councils across the country have 100% relief. And as we've heard, after Durham, we are the most generous council in the North East. And then I'd just finally like to address some of the things we've talked about in terms of actually making a real difference to the people that need it most. We're doing things, we're addressing education underperformance. We inherited a council where education wasn't performing as well as it could be. It still isn't, but we're making it much better. And we're making some difficult decisions. We're investing in our schools. And we're doing the things that will actually make the biggest difference to alleviating poverty in this county. We're also doing a lot to attract better jobs and more jobs, particularly in the southeast area. We're doing some wonderful work, yes, that you started, but we're carrying it on and accelerating it. And we're opening up opportunity in the southeast. We've moved the Northumberland train line on. So we're doing things that are actually going to make a significant concrete difference to the lives of thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of people. So I recommend that we accept this proposal and it goes forward to form part of the budget in February. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Nesbitt, did you propose a named vote? You need support of a fifth, is it? Is that supported? Right, okay, we'll have a name vote. Right.
Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Baughan. Councillor Bennon. Councillor Bowman. Councillor Bridget. Chairman, I've taken advice in relation to this issue in the recent past, and in my view, in consideration of the wide debate there has been and the consideration of this item in the previous year, I do believe that you will be entitled to vote yes. Yes. Councillor Campbell? Against. Councillor Carty? Not here, apologies. Councillor Castle? Councillor Sesford? Councillor Clark? Yes. Councillor Crosby? Councillor Dale? Councillor Daly? Councillor Grant Davey? Against. Councillor Susan Davey? Against. Councillor Dickinson? Against. Councillor Dodd? For. Councillor Dunbar? For. Councillor Dungworth? Against. Councillor Flux? For. Councillor Gallagher? Against. Councillor Gibson? For. Councillor Gobin? Councillor Grimshaw? Against. Councillor Heppel? Against. Councillor Hill? Against. Councillor Homer? For. Councillor Horncastle? For. Councillor Hutchison? For. Councillor Jackson? For. Councillor Jones? For. Councillor Kennedy? Against. Councillor Lang? Against. Councillor Laurie? For. Councillor Ledger? Against. Councillor Murray? Councillor Nesbitt? Against. Councillor Oliver? For. Councillor Parry? Against. Councillor Pattison? For. Councillor Purvis? Against. Councillor Quinn? For. Councillor Reid? For. Councillor Renner Thompson? Councillor Richards? Go on. Councillor Riddle? For. Councillor Robinson? Against. Councillor Roughhead? For. Councillor Sanderson? For. Councillor Seymour? Councillor Sharp? For. Councillor Simpson? Against. Councillor Stewart? For. Councillor Stowe? For. Councillor Swinburne? For. Councillor Swithenbank? Against. Councillor Thorne? For. Councillor Wallace? Against. Sorry, Councillor Wallace? Against. Thank you. Councillor Watson? For. Councillor Wearmouth? For. Councillor Webb? Against. Councillor Wilson? Thank you, members.
That is carried 34 votes to 26. 2. Council tax empty house premium. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. So the current situation is that unfurnished houses that have been unoccupied for more than 2 years attract a premium of 50% on their council tax. And the proposal is to increase that to 100%, and then after 5 years to 200%, and then after 10 years to 300%. So I'm sure we're all aware of properties in our own wards that have fallen into disrepair. And these properties often become a blight on our community. They become a safety risk. Sometimes there's a fire risk, and they sometimes attract antisocial behaviour. We've got 673 properties across the county that would fall into one of these categories, and we're proposing that we introduce those premiums. There will be discretionary support available, and the council already helps people to make houses habitable. In extreme cases, we can enforce refurbishment on houses. Indeed, that's happening to a house in my ward. And we can and then take control of the property, rent it out, and recover the money. So I think this is a good policy. It'll bring more homes back into use for people across the county. It'll improve our environment, and you know, I would recommend it.
Right. We recommend Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Chair. Questions really that I've got. Is this at all retrospective, or is it still? Because I know a house that's been empty all my life, really. So it'll start this year and then it'll build up. How much shall we expect to raise from this?
Councillor Oliver. Oh, do you want to give all your questions and then?
Well, we'll answer them one at a time. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know how much we're going to raise, but actually to me it's not about raising money, it's about getting those houses back into use. As I understand it, I think it can be applied, it's basically the point at which it becomes a policy, it can be applied from the point at which the property became empty. So with a house that's been empty all of your life, then I suspect that would immediately
70 year?
attract a 300% premium.
Oh, lovely.
Because I think you're older than 10 years old.
Yeah. Yes.
Doesn't that?
Only just. So that's interesting. Well, I mean, that all sounds very good. But these empty properties at the moment, how difficult is it for us to collect the council tax as it stands?
It is difficult, but obviously the normal council tax collection processes would apply. So that could include the courts as a last resort. But as I say, where there is a property empty, so the property in my ward, the plan there is to actually, the council will go in, will refurbish it, and then we'll rent it out. The owner can, at a point in the future, choose to sell it, but the amount that the council has spent on refurbishing it would be repaid to the, effectively they would have a charge on the asset, and it would be repaid to the council before the rest of the sale proceeds went to the owner.
I think that's quite an old policy, that though. I don't think that's just
that one is an old policy,
yeah.
But I think what this does is it sort of this policy with that policy focuses people's minds and gives, hopefully will accelerate the rate at which these houses are brought back into use.
Well, I wish it looked, Chair, but there are one or two problems I can see with it. Houses that have been empty for a long time, there's always a story behind it, and that house that I'm thinking of, that is literally been empty all my life, nobody knows who it belongs to. So I'm not really certain how some of these very knotty problems are going to be dealt with. But I'm willing to give it a try to see whether this actually can move stuff, if this is something we can actually do. But I think you might find that it's actually more difficult. Just because you know it's there, it's finding it, and even if you can't find out who owns it, then you've got the problem of getting the money off them, and you've got the problem of taking the court and all the rest of that stuff. So it might actually cost us more than you think. But, I'll be voting for it.
Councillor Dale, and then I'm going.
I just wanted to make a point which Councillor Reid was saying about getting the funded money back. You've got to understand, out of 673 houses, 417 of those are in Band A. Band A. So those are houses which pay very low, the lowest council tax, obviously, and therefore they will be very difficult to get the money out of them. And it might cost you a lot more, because if you're talking about 417 out of 673, and therefore we're talking about Band A, the lowest house. Now, I know a lot of them, I don't know if they belong to housing associations, but there'll be a real cost, the same cost to get a small amount of money, which might be a massive battle, but a cost to this council.
I've got Councillor Dickinson.
Can I just, can I just address that point? I mean, first, there's 2 points really. First of all, those houses would have already had a bill in any case, so the extra cost, there will be no extra cost because they'll have had a bill. It's just going to be a bigger bill. And then the second point is that the outturn collection rate on existing AHP properties is 91.6%. So even if we fall short of that, we'll still be collecting more money.
Councillor Dickinson.
I'd like a name vote on this check. No, I'm joking.
So
we've had the ability since April 2013 to collect rates, and we had to start somewhere, and this seems to be the natural progression, and this is about encouraging empty properties and such like back into use from the owners or owners' families, whichever. You know, there are a large proportion of people on waiting lists. Some of these properties could be reused to home people through good private landlords, or working with the council on a partnership approach, or a social landlord, whatever it might be. I mean, the Labour group certainly supports this incentive, which is what it will turn out to be for landlords and property owners to actually do something with empty properties that causes concern across Northumberland and in all our communities in some shape or form.
Councillor Nesbitt.
Can I just ask about houses that you cannot bring back into repair? And I'm talking about a portfolio who's got a number of houses in the Croft Ward that you could not repair them. I think they're called the house that Jack built because he keeps building on, and they're actually you cannot do anything with them. So does that come under this as well?
I think it applies to all houses. So, I mean, because we're talking about two different things. One thing is actually sending them a larger bill, and that can obviously be applied to any house. And then the other scheme, which exists already, which is not what we're voting on today, is the sort of enforced refurbishment. The enforced refurbishment, I guess the council officers dealing with it would look at each individual case and see whether it was actually worthwhile doing it.
Councillor,
it would be good to get the Croft Ward area, because of absent landlords is absolutely appalling. Thank you.
Councillor Bourne and then Councillor Heppel. I do pick everybody in order.
Just very briefly, just to give some comfort to those who are sort of concerned that the council would lose money, the obvious thing here is we're talking about property. So ultimately, if they don't pay, we can repossess the property and sell it. So there's no real risk at all that the council will be out of money in the end.
Councillor Heppel.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think empty properties are a bit of a blight on the neighbourhood in which they exist. It creates a lot of problems. I mean, this is a bold but a good move, I would say, and I would support it. There's two or three sort of points I would like to make. Are the council making full use of empty property orders where they can take back control of those properties? I assume they are. I don't know what the figures are for that. Secondly, in terms of the number 673, do we have a 10-year analysis of that? I mean, is that predominantly the private sector, the unoccupied sector? I'd be very, very worried if any of our properties were empty for 2 years or more. Our council houses I'm talking about.
Right, Councillor Oliver.
I don't know the answer to that. We can find out, but I'd be very surprised if any of them were our properties.
I don't know if anyone recalls, but I had a bit of work done way back in the day of scrutiny, and it was about empty houses, and I think the number that we're talking about here might be slightly wrong. because there was 2,500 empty properties in this county, and everybody got a breakdown of how many empty properties there were in their division. The north of the county was by far the worst. Yours, Councillor Reid, was the best with only 2 empty properties. So I think that the figures might be somewhat different. So I think we all welcome this work. At Ponteland, there's a 1973 Ford Consul that has got a mature tree in the middle of it. So that shows you now how trumps yours. Right, can we agree this? I have no further speakers. Can we agree? Thank you. Item 11, interim report of the Constitution Working Group. Councillor Oliver, again, having a busy day.
I am, thank you, Chair. I'll keep this very brief. This is an all-party or a multi-party working group. I won't go through the proposals in detail. I'll just pick out a couple of highlights. I think first, which are personal highlights for me. 12.4 is shorter speeches, which I think we would all welcome, and 10.3 which a particular Councillor Reid will welcome, is a focus on outcomes in motions.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I hate to say this, but I'm going to sound as grumpy as Councillor Reid about motions. I find this extremely frustrating and disappointing. You may recall it was over a year ago that Councillor Roughhead proposed to review the Constitution, and that was something that I seconded. And we both had taken interest in this area of work and had noticed areas of the Constitution that looked many areas that should be opened up for review and discussion. I think actually it was quite discourteous and unusual that neither the proposer or the seconder of that motion was asked to be in the working group. And instead, if you don't have people that have expressed an interest and prepared to spend the time, you've got other people who I heard actually shuffling off to go to the working group, who were talking as if it's a bit of a chore, which added to the frustration. And when I look, and this has been over a year, page 137 to 139, for 15 months. I mean, this looks like a couple of hours work, and it's as thin as everything. I mean, really, out of all the things in the Constitution, you can come out with members should be reminded they need to stand, never mind some temporarily or permanently will struggle to stand, and then nonsense like extending the time that you have to give notice of putting in a motion to allow dialogue between the political groups. Since when do the political groups discuss motions? As we've seen, we've got the ridiculous scenario of motions to pat themselves in the back, trap the other party or whatever. So I have to say, this looks like a tick box exercise. It looks like something could have done in 50 minutes, the length of time discussing the climate change. I just think it's really disappointing.
Councillor Dungworth.
Yeah, I think it's important that we don't miss out the other recommendations at the bottom of this report. So I think Councillor Oliver has talked about some of the changes that have been recommended, but from this working group it's recommended that we review thoroughly the representations on outside bodies and indeed outside bodies, to look at it's recommended to authorise training for overview and scrutiny members. And also something that is really dear to my heart is looking at options, different ways of doing meetings, looking at working groups. You know, I have had a period recently of working groups that I've gone to that have lasted sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes half an hour. I'm only travelling from Seaton Sluice. There are other people in the county that are travelling over an hour in winter to get there. So I obviously do agree with this report. I'm part of this working group, but I really want to see that final recommendation worked up into something, because we're going into the winter months now. We're talking about climate change. You know, how much money are we spending on sole councillors travelling from remote areas to come here? have a meeting, have a cup of tea and go back again. And also it stops working age people from standing for this council, because it is virtually impossible to do it when you've got these little meetings dotted around during the day. So we have to look at a modern way of working this council going forward. So I just want to make sure those recommendations aren't lost and we go back to them.
Yes, no, I agree with you entirely. I think that it's really important that we do adopt those recommendations. And just picking up on Councillor Hill's point, I would just make a generic point that actually, I mean, I've never been a councillor before this council, so I've got no experience of how it works in other places. But as far as I can see, it works pretty well here. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Councillor Flux.
I don't wish to be critical of Councillor Hill, because I do admire her as a councillor and I think you're a good campaigner for your area. However, I do have to say that I found the work on this committee very useful. I found that it's been conducted in a very good way with a lot of give and take. And I've got to say that as chairman of this committee, I haven't had an email from yourself about this. I'd quite happily take an email in advance. I don't want people turning up, you know, because we could just have a meeting, everyone would turn up. But I quite happily, if someone wants to email me about it, in advance, I can consider it. It doesn't lend itself to, well, as a chair, you're quite happy to. I'm a very open person. You're quite happy to email me if you want to. And, you know, I quite happily take that on board. So I just wanted to say that I want to defend that committee, and I would like to commend the people who've been on that committee, commend the work they're going to continue doing. Thank you.
Councillor Ruffhead.
Thanks, Chair. As the person who originally proposed this motion last year, I wasn't actually going to speak on this, but I would just like to echo what Councillor Dungworth mentioned there. I think it's the importance about the council needs to look about towards the future, in terms of like, look how archaic this is holding the microphone. When you see other civic centres, you've got to push a button, and it comes, the mic's in the desk, and then you've got a green button and a red button to vote, which would make the named voting a lot more quicker. The only comment that I will make is the intention behind originally proposing the motion is there was quite a majority of councillors who, when I first proposed this, blocked it, and I didn't want to have to go down this route. And it's an issue that I've raised multiple times. Given that the council has won multiple accolades for sort of its work on equalities, the core document of the council, this is what I mentioned back in the time, you can watch the video, look at the minutes, was that the core document of the council could potentially be discriminatory towards members or staff of this authority who don't identify as either he or she. And I thought, and that was, I kind of sort of said that this council had previously been run by antiquated, out-of-touch dinosaurs. I would sort of hope that what could be annexed to part of this recommendation is, I'm not going to propose line by line of the Constitution changing words, but could we give the authority to the monitoring officer to go away as part of this as well, to update the Constitution so that it just refers to members, officers, and then if you need to assign a gender, so to speak, that it'd be they or their. And then that being the council's principal document, that might give confidence to members of staff who might not identify as he or she. And it means that perhaps a culture change of documents such as the council tax support scheme that we've just debated. I didn't want to mention it in there. It just mentioned an applicant or his, didn't even mention hers. So it might just be a change of culture that we start using open and forward-thinking language. I'd just like that to be considered.
I think we can take that on board, Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that will be picked up by the working group.
Of interest to me sitting here is the reduction from 10 minutes to 6 minutes speaking. And in my time in this chair, I can only recall one going over 10. I won't name him. Former leader, but I won't, a former leader. It might have been Ian Swillen, right? And there is some referring into there to points of order. So have a good read. Okay, can we agree this? Yep. 12, report of the the Executive Director of Adult Social Care and Children's Services, Children and Young People's Plan, Councillor Daly.
Thank you very much, Chair. The purpose of this report is fairly clear.
It is the adoption of the Children and Young People's Plan, which is a multi-agency plan. This is quite unique, and I'm very proud to be presenting this today. One of the reasons being is there have been previous plans, and as members are probably aware, there is now no statutory obligation on a local authority to have a Children and Young People's Plan. But that's not good enough. And we have one, and this is a multi-agency plan. And it's a multi-agency plan which has been informed largely, and I think quite uniquely, by young people. Over 1,000 young people were actually involved and took part in and informed what is actually in this plan. It is in the report, and I'm sure you've all read it. But over 1,000 young people were engaged and were very clear about some of the issues that they wanted us to focus on as a local authority. And part of the reason for completely reformatting this plan was also to make it more accessible to children, to make it more accessible to young people, more accessible to our families, to our partners, and to council employees. And the partners in this multi-agency plan include the police, the NHS, the council, public health, and our schools, and obviously I would hope our wider community as well. So significant involvement and survey with young people, but also quite uniquely as well, absolute focus with our youth cabinet, youth council, who've actually been involved in this process as well. And it's also about a joined up plan as well, and this is very much linked to the ongoing Health and Wellbeing Board strategy, the Safeguarding Partnership, and of course the SEND strategy. And it has a very clear vision. And that vision is to be a place where meeting the needs of children, young people and families is the focus, so that they get the best out of life. The multi-agency key 6 themes which are identified are within the report, but let me just summarise what they are. They are: children and young people know their voice will influence decisions that affect them. That children and young people have the best start in life. Ensure that all services are working together towards tackling any form of disadvantage. That children and young people have access to the best quality education to prepare them for adulthood. Also, that children and young people feel safe and supported and are able to cope with life's ups and downs, and promoting and supporting children and young people to be healthy. These are very, very, I think, ambitious but common sense plans. And I would hope that members have read this report, or supportive of this report, and remember one key thing. This is an evolving document. So what you see today might not be there in 6 months, or might not be there in a year, because it will be informed by things. So I'm very proud of the work which has gone into producing this. And more importantly, and I'm sure you've all read it, there are some key measures in it, because I will be held to account, the administration will be held to account by facts. So one of the things which is in there, and we've kind of touched on this today, about the number of exclusions. We all know that we had one of our schools in Northumberland which was the worst performing in terms of its fixed term and permanent exclusions. In fact, by all data, it excluded more kids than it actually had on roll. Now, we've already started the work on that, and the Task and Finish group, which Councillor Swinburne mentioned, has reported, and that report will be made public. So one of the things that we've started to do is to decrease, work with our schools, work with the best schools, work with those who need a bit more support, and actually we've had a 29% reduction already in those number of fixed and permanent exclusions. But by 2022, we want to go a bit better than that. We want 0. So there are measures in this. It is a plan. It is very much focused around outcomes, and I would hope that it actually commands the support of everyone in this chamber this afternoon. So I commend the report to full council, Chair.
Councillor Dickinson.
I'll be brief. Councillor Daly, there's nothing in this plan that we wouldn't support. It's a positive plan. It's timely for a refresh, as health and other partners refresh their priorities and plans around children and young people. We're pleased to see the continuation of the young people's engagement. and that the 2015-18 plan was referred to as a document moving forward, and it is something to be pleased about, but you're absolutely right, it's an evolving document. As things continue to change, we need to have flexibility to add to it and things like that, which I think it allows scope for. So there's nothing in there that the Labour group would oppose, and we fully support the report.
Thank you. Councillor Dale.
There's just one thing. We did have a working group which started about 4 years ago looking into this, and we worked through the Marmot Review. And I think maybe we want to look back at the Marmot Review, but we did have a lot of discussion about with young children from birth, in fact before then, and going through, and we had psychologists, paediatricians and everything else there, and it really was a really good thorough review, and we met for about 3 years, or if not 4, and it was every member was involved who wanted to be involved, but one of the basic thing was the Marmot Review. And I think it would be useful if you had a look at the Marmot Review. It's a very good review. It's lauded by everybody. But basically, it's got Marmot Review, Fair Society, Healthy Lives, and it's based on, and in fact, some of your some of your objectives are actually in this report and have come from this report. So I'm quite happy to share the information, but please can we have joined up and take every opportunity to use all the information that's there now.
Councillor Dungworth.
Thank you. I'm not going to promise to be brief on this one, I'm afraid. I welcome this report. I value the work that Children's Services does in this local authority. I think we do it very well. I think we do it under some very difficult circumstances at times. But I want to go back, like Councillor Dale did earlier, and the point 2 is children and young people deserve the best start, or have the best start in life, and promoting and supporting children and young people to be healthy. Obviously, I'm not disagreeing with that, but I think the £42 million worth of cuts that Northumberland County Council have taken since the Conservative government came into control make that actually very difficult to do. We've already heard some of the figures about child poverty in Northumberland, but we have in Croft and in Coopen, they are in the 1% of the most deprived wards in this country, okay? In this country. And then we also have, I can't remember which one it is, I can't remember which is the Ashington one, but the Ashington one fits in between that. So all of that makes it very difficult for us to meet our aims in this plan. And that's a decision that has been made. So it is nothing to do with having to fill black holes left by us. It is about the Conservative government making a choice about austerity, that the current spate of announcement about public spending being released again proved that that's exactly what it was. It was a political tool. It was nothing more. In schools, item 4, children and young people have access to the best quality education to prepare them for adult life. I will acknowledge that this administration, and under the portfolio holder, I will acknowledge you're doing a lot, and you know I give you credit for that, Wayne. However, we're talking about £11.5 million worth of cuts to education over the past 5 years in Blythe Valley. That equates to £296.26 per pupils. That's about books, that's about staffing. That does not equate to a good education. And those are political choices that have been made, some of them not by this administration, but by their government, whom they seem to be very reluctant to actually challenge on that. And when you look at the difference in spending between authorities in the north and the northeast in particular, and those in the south, there is a huge disparity. So let nobody be under any illusions that our outrage is full. It is not. It is absolutely real, our outrage, about what has been done in the name of politics to our communities in the last 10 years.
Chair, could I come in? Yeah, thank you. So thank you for that. If I can take Councillor Dale's comment first. We we've gone over and beyond the Marmot review. And if you have a look on page 169, we reference those first 1,001 days. And there is a glossary at the back of the document as well, which looks at the reference source, which perhaps you may want to take a look at. But we've certainly moved on from 4 years ago. So in terms of Councillor Dungworth, and okay, let's be honest in here. I know you're reading from your Labour Party booklets and telling you all about this, that and the other. That's fine. Let me just talk to you about some real things. So when we took over the council 2 years ago, there was a significant backlog of building repair works to be done on our school stock. And this administration over the last 2 years has invested the best part and committed to invest the best part of £150 million in our school stock. And if I could just remind you as well that the previous administration bought a shopping centre. This administration are building new schools in Seaton Valley, in Berwick, in Amble, over in the west of the county, in Hexham. We've completely refurbished and saved. Let's be no doubt about it. We have saved Hayden Bridge. That was a basket case. And the first thing I did with the Regional Schools Commissioner when I saw her 2 years ago was I told her, get Bright Tribe out of Northumberland, and we did. So in terms of our capital stock, we have done a lot. Now, in terms of school revenue, there has been an announcement to level up school funding. So what does that mean? It means that every primary and first child in Northumberland will get £3,750 per pupil, which will have a significant impact on a lot of our schools in Northumberland. For secondary schools, it's 5,000. But despite what you say, oh, it's terrible and all the cuts and there's no teachers, can I just let you into a little bit of news here? And if you don't believe me, go to the Department for Education website and hopefully you'll read the press in the next few weeks about this as well. But Northumberland is bucking the trend. Our first and our primary, we are the second top performing local authority in the north of England. So out of the 12 local authorities, we were 5th in 2017, we were 3rd in 2018, and now we're 2nd in 2019. My ambition is to get to 1. We want to be first. So in terms of our primary and our first offer, our teachers are doing a wonderful job and our families are doing a wonderful job with our children, and we are producing some of the best Key Stage 1 performances in the country. We're about 3% over the national average. We've still got more to do on our secondary, but there's been some good news. We've had improvement in Berwick, we've had improvement in Hexham, we've had a damn big improvement in Cramlington. In fact, everywhere across our county, we've had improvement. And you know what that's down to? That's down to our teachers, that's down to our young people, and it's down to our families. So, you know, I think we're on the same page here. We all want the same things. We all want the best for our young people. But please, I put an appeal to you. And it's in this document. It talks about aspirations and belief. Don't continue to talk down our county. We need our young people inspired. We need our young people to see what job opportunities there are, what fantastic education opportunities there are. I was at a school on Monday morning. I was so impressed. I was there with UK Parliament TV. They were doing interviews with kids in Northumberland. They were so impressed by our young people. I'm impressed by our young people. I don't want to go around saying to them, you've got no hope, you've got no chance, there is no money, give up. No, no, no. We have a moral duty to give our children the best start. We're working to do that. The government's working to do it. I'm sure we'll all work to do it. But please stop talking our county down.
Councillor Campbell. Councillor Campbell. And I've got you. I must remind everybody there is 10 minutes to go before I have to put to you whether we continue, have a break, or what. So just keep that right.
Thank you, Chair. And I would like to say thank you to the officers and Kath for this report. And, you know, Wayne, I know you're very passionate about it. I don't doubt that for 1 minute about education. I've learned that from the last couple of years. But I wish your government was as passionate. I'm not going to connect you both. because I think that would be a disservice to you. But when you read what, I mean, going back to what happened previously with the council tax, all of that does have an impact. Whatever you may want, or whatever dreams or aspirations you may have, that affects children. In the home, poverty affects children in the home. And, you know, that may not be something we as a county can do much about. We have to depend upon national government to put that right. When you see what some of the children have said, what they want, you know, when you see, what is it that they say that some children say that there may be times when they feel shame or can be bored and hungry in school if their families isn't able to afford the same things as others are able to have, like holidays and branded clothes. And that just tells you the inside of the minds of children. And I don't know how we put that right. We as a county will find it difficult. As I said, that's up to a national government to put that right. I hope that those children that participated in that by 2022 will have their dreams fulfilled. And those numbers that we've seen today of children in poverty throughout Northumberland, that those numbers will be zero by 2022. We owe it to those children. If nothing else, we as a council owe it to those children to make sure that we do our best to take children out of poverty.
Councillor Grimshaw. Then I think we could move on.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Campbell said, and I think it's important that the children go to school with food in their tummies and that they're fed, they've got decent clothes, and I think we should be looking at this government to try and improve this, because that affects education without a shadow of a doubt. So I take on board, yes, what Councillor Campbell said about indeed you're passionate, Wayne, and we do appreciate that, and the schools are doing well, but unfortunately we'll have to look at this when the children are going to school in the state, and in fact some of the parents are keeping them off because their children want to go to school because of, you know, having no shoes, proper, you know, like their school uniforms, etc. And I don't know how we can address that. Not being political, but just how can we address the fact that they haven't got school uniforms, haven't got decent shoes, they're not being fed. And I think, you know, we all have a duty of care with this, and I don't think anybody would disagree with it. Thank you.
Right, can we...
Could I just...
Yeah, okay.
Because I think you've raised a really important point about school uniforms. And I am one of those people, and I know it's been discussed in Parliament before it closed, is to end school uniforms. What that doesn't mean is that nobody just turns up what they want, but it is to end those individual school uniforms that you can only buy from certain shops, which are absolutely prejudicial to some of our communities. And I fully support the ending of that, and that is something which hopefully you know, we should perhaps take up as a council. On a second point, I don't know whether members are aware, perhaps you are, we actually employ now a poverty coordinator. Bit of a strange name, but what her role is to actually get out into communities and engage with them. She's run 2 fantastic sets of summer schools and holiday clubs, and in fact I had the privilege over this summer to spend quite a lot of time with a number of the young children from Redrow, from Blythe, from Ashington, and from some of our communities who actually were taking part in those holiday clubs. And just as an anecdote, it was funded, we funded it, it was really well attended, it was built on from what had gone on last year. And the big thing which came from the parents and carers was, this looks really good, why can't we get involved? So you know what she did? She took the initiative and said, yeah, you can get involved. So they actually rocked up to Northumberlandia and other places and actually engaged. So there's a lot going on. We're setting up a community cafe in Ashington. There's a community cafe which is in Berwick. We're also looking at, we have a very strong children's centre offer in Northumberland, and I was very keen that we maintain that children's offer. There's a lot going on, and perhaps what I think I may do is to do a summary for all members and make sure that that is circulated over the next few weeks, because there is a lot which is being done. I think we are all on the same page. We may argue about a lot of things, but I think the one thing we're all consistent about, we want the best for our kids, and honestly, that's what we are committed to as well.
Is it anything new, Councillor Davey? Because I'm getting very near to the 6...
It was simply a remark. It was so nice to hear a socialist sitting sitting on your side of the chair, the chamber there, and we'll give him an application form on his wheel.
I would never join a party of which you are a member, Grant.
I'm sure when you give him the bit of paper, he'll know where to put it. Right. Can we agree that?
Agreed.
Right. Report of the Chief Executive. This is Councillor Oliver, Community Governance, Longhoughton Parish.
Yeah, I think...
I've sat through loads of community governance reviews. I understand the Newton by the I understand the position of Newton by the Sea, and it's quite clear in here. But on the actual main one, Longhoughton, who have had an increase in population, can the officer just phone us, email us, or write to us and tell us why they haven't got one additional councillor in Longhoughton and still retain 10 within the whole parish? I'm at a total loss as to why this is before us today.
Right, that will be looked at. Can we agree that? Agreed. Right, report of the returning officer, polling districts and stations. Councillor
Question and a possible remark. Can the officers please tell the group or every councillor in this room whether all of these places in the polling districts are actually booked for the general election? If not, this is the request. And councillors who haven't got a polling station, please receive that information by email tomorrow.
all premises are booked, I'm being told. Councillor Oliver,
I think the team are working with all the individual venues to find suitable arrangements. So if they need to be moved into a different room that isn't normal, or but what I'm assured that everything is being dealt with, and all they'll all go ahead. And if there are any issues, we'll inform local members.
can we agree that? No, Councillor Reid.
Sorry. There are two options. Can we do both of them? It's only 800 quid. This is about people are getting the... It's 191. Basically, we've got two options. We can either send everybody a letter, or we can write the address of the polling station on the card they're going to get. And what I'm saying is, just to be sure, we should do both.
Just the leader saying we can do both. Are we happy with that change? We can agree it then, yeah? Thank you. Appointments. Can we agree? 2, Family and Children's Services co-opted members. Agreed. January council meeting. It's recommended, it goes over the page, that the date for public questions, member questions, motions, etc. is the Thursday the 19th of December. Are we okay with that? I was going to wish you all a Merry Christmas at this meeting, but we've got another one because I'll have to do it there. But we're going to have a Brexit Christmas lunch. Do you know what that is? It's exactly the same, but without Brussels.